There are some additional members coming. They'll be a little bit late, but we have a pretty long agenda, so I'd like to get started now, if that's okay. Mr. Evans, would you call the roll, please?
On the call of the roll, Member Rummel.
Present.
Rummel present. Member Winston.
Yeah.
And Winston is noted absent. Member Wolf. Member Wolf is noted absent. Member Cooper has informed me that he will be absent today. Member Pilthall. Present. Pilthall present. Member Hepner. Member Hepner is noted absent. Member David.
Present.
Member David present. Member Fisher.
Present.
Fisher present. Member Hinsey.
Present.
Member Hinsey present. Member Vice Chair Highland.
Present.
Highland present. And Chair Washburn.
Present.
Washburn present.
Member Winston did arrive.
Present. Noted.
Confirmed.
And Madam Chair, we have a quorum. I've received no agenda changes.
Thank you. Would you call the next item on the agenda, please?
Item number 2 is the approval of the December 3rd, 2014 meeting minutes.
I have some small editing suggestions that I will turn over to you. Anyone else? Member Pilthall?
I also have some edits that I went through. Unless there are others, I was going to move to approve the minutes with the edits that we submitted. There. So moved. I moved it. Second.
And we should note that Member Hepner has arrived. How would you like to be addressed?
That's Evans, Mr. Evans. Thank you.
Mr. Evans. All right. Members, any additional changes? At this time, I'd like to take public comment on the motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting. Are there any comments? Okay, seeing none, if we could approve the minutes without objection. Okay, Mr. Evans, would you call the next item on the agenda, please?
Item number 3 is file number 14047, complaint filed by Thomas Peavy against Supervisor Katie Ting, Sarasota Board Supervisors, for allegedly violating Administrative Code sections 67.21C, 67.25A, and 67.29-7 for failure to respond to an immediate disclosure request in a timely and complete manner. The subsigned Ordinance Task Force heard the matter on December 3rd, 2014, and found violations of Sunshine Ordinance sections 67.21C and 67.25A, and continued the matter for consideration of additional violations, including but not limited to the Sunshine Ordinance section 67.29-7.
All right. Member Pilthall.
Yeah, just a disclosure. I was not at the last meeting. I did not have an opportunity to listen to the audio, but I did read the minutes and read the packet, but I believe I'm familiar with the material and able to participate. Also, I should note that I'm an appointee of Supervisor Tang on another body, but I don't feel that I feel that I can be objective in the matter, and I don't feel that I'm biased.
All right. So, members, this was an interesting item. And so what happened at the end was Member Wolf, who happens to not be here right now, found some additional emails, and I found an additional email that had not been disclosed and also had not been apparently forwarded to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. So an issue here is whether there's a violation of, and I should note that Member Wolf has just entered the room. So an issue here is whether or not there's possibly an additional violation. In particular, Section 67.29-7, which is failure to maintain records in a professional manner. So there, I'd like to open, before we get started and possibly hear from the parties, I'd like to hear from a couple of members of the, I'd like to open this up to the task force for comments and to get our bearings here.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair Washburn. I found this case last month very interesting, and it's something that I've spent the last month actually thinking quite a bit about. I thought that Member Rommel's point of asking to be recused and then being refused, then it not being granted the recusal was a very, and it was an interesting discussion that went on around that. And then to take it a step further, it was, I think, incredibly unusual. I'm not sure anyone on the task force had experienced literally a member of the task force coming up with, for all intents and purposes, facts and evidence in a case, in the middle of the case. And that it leaves me, I think, concerned or confused or just not sure really what to do with that. To a certain extent, it feels like Member Wolf is actually providing facts and evidence in support of a task of a violation, and then he would also simultaneously, if he does not recuse himself, he would simultaneously also be voting whether to find a violation. And that seems, given all of the kind of tumult around this, complicated, is I guess the word, or concerning maybe would be a word that I have. So I'd be curious to hear what other members have to say about this particular case.
Yes.
Considering that this complaint concerns my nomination and that I have the same conflict as Mark does, I'm aware of what happened the last few minutes, and it's going to be very hard for me to vote at all on this. I might just walk out of there at that point, but I don't think it, as the day, I don't think I have a vote.
Member Philpott?
A couple of things, and that we're not even anywhere near the substance. We're still dealing with all these issues. Members certainly have the option to walk, whether they're recused or not, on an item, so long as we have a quorum. If we get to below a quorum, you get to a rule of necessity. You can call members back. You can force people to vote on things where they're conflicted. You get into all kinds of crazy places. I think in terms of this item, I'm not quite sure what to do with the Member Wolf situation. I'm still thinking about that, but I think that's Member Winston and frankly for all of us. The issue that I've read is not really about the appointments, it's about documents, and it's about whether the supervisor provided the responsive documents on a timely basis. The task force already found a violation as to that. Whether there was any other violation, 29-7 or anything else, we can certainly discuss that, and I think if we can keep in mind that it's really about the document retention, production, and the process around that, and just because it happens to deal with appointments of this task force shouldn't really color the issue in my mind. But I guess that's up to each of us to figure out. Those are my thoughts at this point.
Member Rommel.
So I think my concern, well, at least with myself, I already participated last time, so I'm fine participating this time. Yeah, the problem has already occurred, so I don't understand what benefit would be had by recusing myself now. But that's just, my perspective on me. With regards to Mr. Wolf's and the email, I think that goes to a broader problem that we have with task force members kind of doing research, and I don't attribute any, ill will or malice to anybody, but I think a general rule in these types of proceedings is that we should base our decisions on the evidence that the parties present to us. You're certainly free to look at the law or the rules that we're interpreting, but to go out and root around for our own information, I think is probably a bit too far. And so I have concerns with considering that at all, let alone what it does for Mr. Member Wolf.
Well, let's hear from Member Wolf, who just raised his hand.
I think Member Rimmel brings up good points about doing additional research and the complication that brings up. I don't know necessarily how best to handle that, but I think this is actually a slightly different situation that during the proceedings, I remembered that I had received an email and sent an email that were that appeared to be under the request filed by Mr. Peel, and then it was just a matter of verifying that my memory was correct, not really outside research. So I think that does bring up a sort of thin area, but it opens up this door that if someone says that they think there's emails that don't exist, the other party says that all emails have been sent. Usually, we don't happen to have been a party to one of those emails, but in this case, I was. And when we're not a party to one of those emails, we have no way of really verifying that all emails that are related to that have been produced. And I think that this is just sort of an opportunity to see that example that is normally hidden from our view.
Thank you. Are there other comments? I'd like to ask our Deputy City Attorney Cola to share any observations, counsel. This is a difficult one for us, as you can see.
It is, and I think to simplify it, maybe we should just focus. We should have a very narrow focus on this. I believe previously there already have been found that not all records were disclosed, so that aspect of the case maybe should just be temporarily forgotten about. I think now it's just determining whether or not the supervisor's office managed to keep adequate records. So from that standpoint, I think when the parties come up and the task force begins asking them questions, maybe just focus on that aspect of it to determine whether or not you think they're maintaining their records properly. And like I said before, deleting an email doesn't necessarily equate to destroying a record. So let's see if the parties had reason to believe that when they deleted an email that it was still going to be preserved somewhere else for a certain amount of time and that it would have been retrievable, and what their process is for retrieving those deleted emails. And if we stick to that narrow focus, I think we shouldn't have too many issues.
Okay, thank you. As you were talking, and I was also thinking before that this is an opportunity. I was reading the letter that is in our package dated December 24th from Supervisor Tang's office discussing the violations that we found and the efforts that our office is taking to help ensure that they're better able to respond to records with requests in the future. Addresses our findings in our order of determination. It does not, however, address the specific matter before us about maintaining records in a professional way so that so that they can be retrieved. So maybe this is an opportunity to work with the supervisors in general about this issue, and could be something for the EOT to take up. But I think we do have before us a matter of a possible violation, and I think we need to focus on that now and hear from the parties. But members, there is the issue of whether you want to be a party to this hearing. First of all, Member David.
So I'm going to make a motion just to put it on the record, and if it doesn't get seconded, obviously it will die. But I'm going to make a motion for members Rommel, members Winston, and members Wolf to recuse themselves. I would separate the question for. I'd be willing to separate the question to each individual. To do it vote one by one. And so, I would ask for a second and a discussion and a vote.
Member Wolf?
I'm not seconding. I have a question. You're essentially making a motion to recuse us, not a motion for us to recuse ourselves, because that would be voluntary.
Well, I'm happy to do it either way. My point is that before Member Rummel made a motion to recuse himself, and that failed. And so it sounds like Member Winston, from what I understand what he's saying, is basically asking. So I'm happy if people want to, if people would like to amend it, that it is themselves asking to be recused, I'm happy to do that. If people do not, if someone does not feel, it sounds like Member Rummel does not feel like he needs to be recused this time. So that's why I'm saying I'm willing to defy the question. I'm willing to make a motion for Member Rummel to be recused. I'm willing to open it up if Member Winston wants to make the request himself. Doesn't matter to me either way. And same with yourself, Member Wolf, if you would like it. Either way, it works for me.
Well, first of all, there's in a second, so let's...
Yes, there was.
I'm
willing to second it.
Okay, all right. Vice Chair Hyland.
With respect to Member David, I think that's a procedure that the chair should take rather than being voted by or proposed and seconded by one of the members. Because I agree with Member Wolf that I think you should use yourself, at least offer that up rather than us volunteering that.
Well, with all due respect to Member Vice Chair Hyland, you were not here for the very rich debate that happened at last month's meeting, and so I think that if you were here for last month's meeting, you might put more into context why this conversation is taking place.
I agree with that. There was the mechanics of refusal.
Okay. I apologize to the chair if I've offended by making this motion.
No, there's no offense taken. It is a little unusual. We could get there in a number of different ways. Member Wolf?
I'm aware of why on the face of it there is a perception that I should recuse myself, but I'd like to hear from any task force members and the city attorney if he has an opinion on why I should do so if they feel I should do so.
Okay, now I'm thinking that given there are three different people with three different feelings about this, that it would make sense for them to weigh in themselves, and if you would agree to withdraw your motion, I think we would apply.
Absolutely, 100. I will happily withdraw my motion.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'll do my second.
Yeah.
If you
I'll do
would.
my second.
All right, okay, so Member Wolf, then Member Rummel.
Well, I sort of, I guess, had an introduction to what I'm saying right now, but so the email that, in the previous meeting, the email that was raised as an email that wasn't brought up or wasn't produced in the request was an email that I was a party to. To the extent that we're only focusing on that email as a violation, I think that perhaps that should be separated and I should recuse myself from that. But the larger issue at hand, I don't see a reason that I couldn't be impartial, and I don't really see a perception of inability to be impartial either, so I don't see an overarching reason to recuse myself at this time.
All right, Member Rummel.
So to get what you asked initially is other people's perception of whether you should recuse yourself or not. And City Attorney Cole, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard you saying is that this email is evidence of something we've already found a violation, right? It's evidence that not all records were turned over initially, which we found a violation for last time. if we're considering the issue of whether or not records were maintained in a professional form, that's, I don't necessarily know that you finding this email really gets to that too much. If we were even to consider the email in the first place, which I don't think we should do, but that's my.
All right. So at this time, members who would like to recuse themselves, if you would make that known to us, so we can move forward then.
I'd like to recuse myself on the same grounds that I mentioned before. I did review of this complaint, second my nomination, and it's an evolving organization that I'm a part of, and I'm actively part of their Freedom Information Committee. I just don't see where that actually participates as well.
All right. Now, do we need, he makes a motion, maybe a second, and we vote on it?
I will second on
All right. Discussion, members? At this time, I'd like Member Pilbell.
I'm willing to vote on this. I'm happy to support it. I don't want us to get any farther into the what are the standards for refusal and this is set a precedent for future stuff. I'm not prepared to deal with that normative thing, but I'm happy to support this. Remember Winston on this particular question.
Member Wolf?
I'm not really sure procedurally why we need to vote. I know we did it with Mark or with Member Rummel last time, but I don't know procedurally why we should be voting on whether someone can recuse themselves. It seems like we're voting on whether or not they have the free will to excuse themselves, and it just doesn't sit comfortably with me.
I can explain.
Member Pilbell, please help us here.
So unless a member has a financial conflict of interest, which we don't in these matters, I hope not at least, if a member believes that they wish to be recused from a vote, then they make a motion, we go through this process. Absent that, any member who's present at the meeting participates in votes. So the assumption is that you're able to, when you participate in vote, unless you've made some kind of showing and asked to be recused, and there's a vote that recuses you from participation on that matter. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
And this is what we've done in the past. Okay. So at this time, we'd like to hear public comment on this motion for Mr. Winston to recuse himself.
I'm Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, and I have not been a party to this case nor to the previous discussions. But I did want to point out some things with regard to recusals. First of all, I think you've already been set straight by your vice chair. A recusal is something that a person offers or asks for, not something that is imposed upon them, to my knowledge. Second of all, as you know, when somebody recuses from here, typically they lose the vote, and it becomes, if it's a case brought by a complainant, it's a no vote automatically. The real question is, can the person requesting the recusal be fair, particularly when there's no financial conflict of interest? Now, there was something else that was said that was, I thought, very troubling. It reminded me of the Hitchcock movie, just the title, not the content, The Man Who Knew Too Much. I don't see any problem with folks revealing that they have stumbled upon something that is relevant to the case, that it's there. In fact, Member Rummel said we should base our decision on what the parties present. And that's certainly not what other bodies do, and it's not what previous task forces have done. In the days, particularly when Bruce Brugman was a very active member, there was very active questioning by task force members of complainants and respondents in an attempt to get at the truth, and in an attempt to see whether something seemed fishy or not. And that seems to me completely appropriate. And in fact, sometimes I guess I wish the task force members would be more active in putting two and two together from their own experience, from their own knowledge, from what they have seen with regard to the evidence. When they ask questions comments or respondents in an attempt to get at the truth. Now, I'm not asking members of the task force to go out on their own and be detectives or Miss Marple, but I do think that it's very appropriate and very good if the members are active in using their brains with regard to what they see, with regard to what they hear, and if they feel they can add something, then I think that's just fine. I can certainly recall Rick Nee in something that I thought was inappropriate. He sought the advice of an attorney and at the last minute brought it in as advice with regard to what to do legally. I thought that was inappropriate because he blindsided people. I don't think that's the case here. Be active, I think it's fine, and ask whether it would be a conflict of interest and unable to be fair on the person requesting a recusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment on this matter? Or on the motion?
Good afternoon, Thomas Piccarello. Perhaps Mr. Winston can reiterate what the reasons he wants to recuse himself, because one, I have hearing loss, and two, Mr. Winston does not speak into the microphone. He has a bad habit. So if you might just let me and maybe the members of the public who want to hear your explanation, and then I can opine whether or not I oppose or accept it. Is that permissible?
He stated it. I think it's time to move on.
Okay, well, I understand that you're not televised, so the public at home has to rely on audio recordings. And if task force members don't speak into the microphones, they don't know what the heck you're doing, do they? I'll oppose the motion. Just because of the math of getting anything done, any approval of the complainant. One other thing, since I'm getting 3 minutes, you need to stay on your agenda items. This item agenda has already been an order of determination, and you're now going to discuss whether or not there were additional violations. That's on your agenda. And now you're having all these discussions about recusing yourselves and not recusing yourselves. The focus on this agenda item is whether or not there was any additional violations by Supervisor Tang. It may be troubling to some task force members to discuss Supervisor Tang. And I would hope that both task force members Fisher and David on the next agenda item recuse themselves when it comes to Supervisor Weiner because of your close relationship to Supervisor Weiner. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment on the motion? All right, at this time, Mr. Evans, would you call the roll on the motion, please?
And on motion, Member Rommel.
Aye.
Rommel aye. Member Winston.
You do vote.
Aye. Winston aye. Member Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf aye. Member Pilbo.
Aye.
Pilbo aye. Member Hebner.
Aye.
Hebner aye. Member David.
Aye.
David aye. Member Fisher.
Aye.
Fisher aye. Member Hinsey.
Aye.
Hinsey aye. Vice Chair Hyland.
No.
Hyland no. And Chair Washburn.
Aye.
Washburn aye. And the motion passes.
Okay, are there any other motions before we hear the merits of for this item? All right, at this time, we'll have a regular hearing. And I'd like to ask both parties to focus, if you would, on the specific matter before us about the nature of the maintenance of records to the extent that you're able to. And so this time the complainant, Mr. Peel, you have 5 minutes to talk about this matter.
Actually, Madam Chair, if the hearing itself was held at the last meeting, could you maybe limit to 3 minutes? This is really just not the entire issue. We've already done just a thought. I don't want to spend 5 minutes talking about it.
No, I think let's just go ahead, okay? I don't want a discussion about that. And Mr. Peel, if you would.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the task force. Good afternoon. I don't think I need 5 minutes on this. The question arose at the last meeting as to what other documents may not have been released under my request. And of course, I have no way of knowing, frankly. The request covered about 9 months. It covered the supervisor and her staff and responsive emails that I received. I believe covered 2 calendar days, perhaps 3. Mr. Wolf asked me at the last meeting if I had received an email that he sent to the supervisor's staff, and my answer was no, I had not. It obviously raises further questions that you're concerned about records retention, how emails are kept. Are they deleted indiscriminately, which seemed to be the case with Mr. Wolf's email. We don't have an answer from the supervisor as to what happened to Mr. Frank's email about Mr. Wolf's nomination. It begs the question, what other responsive documents had at least been created that would fall under the request that are either gone, not searched for, or simply deleted. We've seen no effort in the more than a month that's gone by by the supervisor to attempt to recover any documents. All I can ask is that you take this matter seriously, and I think you were all really very probative last time about the issues of how emails are retained. What is the responsibility of the holder of emails, especially when the holder of those emails is an elected official? And I would point out one other thing. We've all seen assuming you've all seen Supervisor Tang's follow-up letter about the last hearing and the things that she said she would do to ensure better compliance going forward. And that's great. But there is one thing I think she got wrong, and that is that she would refer requesters to the clerk of the board's office to look for additional documents. I would point out that if a request is made to her as an elected official, it is her responsibility to answer that request wholly, not refer the requester elsewhere for records that involve her office. The Constitution, Public Records Act, and the Spirit of Sunshine Ordinance put the entire burden of response on the person to whom the records is requested. And I would hope that would begin to sink in a little bit with the supervisor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to offer facts and evidence in support of the complainant? All right, seeing none, is there someone here from Supervisor Tang's office?
Good evening, I'm Deanna Keyson here on behalf of the Office of Supervisor Kitty Tang. Good to see you all again and Happy New Year. As was stated, to focus on the section 72.29-7, our office maintains that we do follow all local retention and local and state retention records laws regarding those issues. Our office, in specific to this particular matter, was interesting because it was an email to me, and I believe it's more of an issue of searchability as opposed to destruction. But in terms of maintenance of records, our office does fully try to comply with all local laws and state regulations. So we are happy to answer any questions regarding those retention policies and procedures as well. So thank you very much for hearing this matter.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to offer facts and evidence in support of the supervisor?
I forgot to state that Wilson Eaton from the clerk of the board's office is here as well for additional questions if you'd like to direct it to him as well.
Okay. So this matter is now with the task force for questions for the parties. Member Bill Paul.
So Ms. Keyson, you could join us again. Can you speak to the question of whether this particular email from Member Wolf is still in your email, if it was deleted, and follow up?
I would have to, again, search my records. I'm sorry, I apologize because it was produced. I thought that would showed that there was an email that had not been produced originally. I did not speak onto it in the beginning when it was originally disclosed because I wanted to take time to make sure what actually occurred. And upon reading the email, it was wholly my fault when we do searches in response to requests. Because there was no mention of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force or the appointees specifically, it slipped through the cracks, and that is completely my fault in that it was not disclosed originally. So in terms of destruction, I don't believe it was a matter of destruction, it was just an error in search.
So let me follow up on that. For purpose of discussion, I'll err on the side of it's probably in an email folder somewhere, and it hasn't been deleted. That being the case, it does use the words task force. It doesn't use the term Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. So if you did a search on Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, sure, it would not come up in that. So, and it's possible that an email like this might not have even mentioned the word task force. I mean, there are lots of other words in there that are germane to the issue, but wouldn't appear on a search. How do you deal with that in terms of doing what we call a diligent search for a record if you're doing an electronic search for a particular string and it doesn't meet that? How do you deal with that?
We make our best good faith effort to make sure we do diligent searches in all of our for all of our requests through paper documents, email documents. We try to use all of the search strings that have been requested. Usually I'll use and this is just for me personally in the office, I'll use the quotation marks to make sure that the specific search string that has been requested will show up. Oftentimes, it's just we try to make a good faith effort to make sure that the search string is as wide as possible. In this case, instead of in going forward, I should have searched his specific email, and I believe what happened was I searched his name, and then that didn't show up. But not to make any excuses on my behalf, that was my failure to do an accurate search, and we are making sure that the staff in general, when we are asked for these, that we do as comprehensive a search as possible.
And I guess I'm just sort of working through the practicality of this. If on the one hand, we're sort of asking city people to retain all their email because you never know if someone's going to ask for it in the 2, 5, 7, whatever, is it practical to give you an 18-month period and say we're looking for everything, or someone is, let's say, looking for everything within that 18-month period related to a particular topic that might require you to go through each thing and look through the content of it to find it, is that workable? There's some issues in there. There's some tension here, and I'm trying to think about it.
Well, I'd like to say that it does seem pretty impossible if you have thousands of emails and they're not organized in any way. They just, they come in every day, and it's impossible to tell from any of them reading the subject line what they in fact deal with, and that's when it's incumbent on staff. It's part of professional record keeping to have a system of folders, for example, where you have a folder for a sunshine request, or you have a folder for appointment of various, for various commissions for which you make appointments. There are ways to organize information so that it's not a matter of looking for a needle in a very big haystack. You have small folders. And so that issue, I think, is kind of the crux of what we're talking about here. I believe probably that email is still there. If it's not, that's a whole other problem. That means it was deleted and it should not have been. So is what I'm saying, does it make sense?
I do, and I do want to add that we do prioritize, according to Admin Code 8.3, anything that will serve the public purpose or not. Well, in the Admin Code, it said it will not be detrimental to the city and county or defeat any public purpose. So in that, we've taken it to mean if it serves the public purpose, if it's something that relates to the legislative record, if it's something that's very important that the public should know, we do make a diligent effort to keep that email or that record or document. So we are making a diligent effort, and as you had said, there are thousands of emails that we do receive, and it is our task to make sure that we are retaining it in a thorough way. But often, sometimes we're not perfect. That some emails do fall through the cracks.
Vice Chair Hyland.
Ms. Kayson, the correct pronunciation?
Keyson. Yes.
I assume City Hall has its own email client. What do you guys use?
We use Microsoft Outlook.
We use Outlook?
Yes.
Okay. I think it would have been germane to either run your laptop, showing that email does still exist, and produce that here on the screen, or send us evidence that it still did exist. I think would have helped your case somewhat. It's also much point to figure about bad searches. This is where you just kind of get to the nitty-gritty to perhaps lay out policies and procedures for future searches and how they should be referenced in index. I use search strings all the time in my profession. It's, there are also records of searches. And I have to check and see whether Outlook has that as well of interest. Do you happen to have your laptop as your search habit where you can just pop it up and run a search? I'm curious to see how it would look.
We don't have laptops. We just have desktops. So
Okay.
I could.
Forgive my ignorance. Okay.
No problem.
No reason. No worries.
Well, they only provide desktops for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Wolf.
This is a little bit outside of the scope of the actual file itself, but what it sounds like was really necessary in order to adequately be able to retrieve emails in this way is some sort of tagging mechanism, because folders only exist in one place, and that way this email that I had sent, for example, would have been tagged Sunshine Task Force and anything else that might have made sense, and then all of those tags can be searched. But it looks like Microsoft Outlook doesn't provide that functionality, neither do most email clients. So we're dealing with a need that we've identified that may not really have a good solution out of the box at this time, and I think we should be aware of that and looking forward towards how that could be solved by the city at a later point in time.
I think it's time to bring Mr. Ng up so he can help us. Can you see a way to have emails organized so they can be searched?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because I actually work with public records requests on a pretty regular basis, and I've actually consulted the city attorney's advice on this as well, as far as how to actually conduct a due diligence search. And when it comes to very finite searches, like I want every email from so-and-so within this duration, that's actually very clear-cut, and we could search that. Where we kind of run into difficulty is when somebody asks for an email, say, pertaining to this particular subject. In this case, it was any and everything that had anything to do with the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, which could be expansive to a certain degree. And I think a good way to address this is upon supervisors, tank staff, after they conduct their search using keywords, whether it be Sunshine Ordinance Task Force in quotations, SOTF, Task Force, that they disclose to the requester how that search was conducted, and if there is additional search terms or search criteria that they can provide for clarification, there can be a dialogue back and forth. Now, just because the public records is received doesn't mean that the response is just one way. It's not a one-directional communication. So, the recipient can also go back to the requester and say, I would like more clarification. The request doesn't make much sense to me. Can you, my hands are a little bit tied as far as using Outlook. Can you kind of work with me here to provide that date range, specific communication with individuals? Is there a specific topic about the task force that you're looking for? So there can be some back and forth dialogue that can be established. But as far as what are the technical resources that we have, Outlook is pretty much what we're working with, and I haven't heard of any alternative solutions yet.
I'm wondering though with Outlook, which I use for one of my accounts, It is possible to set up folders, isn't it?
It is possible to set up folders.
I'm just trying to think of what a staff member could do to make life easier for the office staff and for requests like this.
Right. It certainly has the capabilities to separate folders. However, that can be a recommendation and a best practice that we can advise to staff. Whether each and every single staff has the capacity or has the discipline to sort out their emails, we do feel that would be micromanaging to a degree. But we can certainly make them aware of those capabilities and perhaps provide training and policy documentation around that. I have spoken with the clerk of the board, and because of this complaint that arose, we are going to be working with the city attorney's office to provide, perhaps codify a policy and best practice to send out to all the aides and supervisors' offices on how to retain emails and what the general policy is as far as copying the clerk of the board on emails is and the destruction and the retention of emails.
I think this is something that you really need to involve the task force in, because our main interest is to make sure members of the public get information that they ask for. And this is a good example of information that existed that should have been identified. And there may be more emails like this.
Right.
I know that I had some correspondence with Supervisor Tang's office too over my appointment.
Sure.
So who knows? And so, you need the perspective of our body and to make sure that the records are found, are locatable.
Right. And I certainly understand the concern about, how do you know what you don't know? And that's why we're going to be working closely with, I'm going to be working closely with the clerk of the board, and we'll certainly copy you on it as well for any input. We're certainly open to that. As far as what the best practice is as far as addressing requesters, and to make sure that that they understand that you're doing a due diligence search and disclose what the mechanisms, what search criteria mechanisms you're using are.
Member Pelmo?
I don't have much to add at this point. I agree with all of your comments. I think, at least with the violations that we found, I think it should go to the committee for further discussion along these lines. I think we should not just receive the policy before it's finally adopted, but we should be actively engaged in helping to develop that policy and the training around it. I think that, this certainly has obviously instant applicability at the Board of Supervisors, but it probably has applicability throughout the city. I'm trying to imagine how everybody else manages their email, and I know someone who doesn't have email. So there are a lot of nuances to this. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the policy that an office can delete an email or record if the clerk is keeping it elsewhere, and how you confirm that that's happening. And there's just a lot to this. If we can come back though to the question of 29.7 I happen to personally hold a pretty high standard for how bad something needs to be for me to think there's a 29-7 violation. It doesn't sound to me, and maybe this is more to Mr. Peel and to Ms. Keyson. It doesn't seem to me that the office was in such disarray that they couldn't find records. It was about how the email was organized, how the search was conducted, and whether the facts got buried under the file somewhere, or how that happened. So I'd like to hear some more about whether records are kept in a professional and business-like manner or not, so that we can get to this issue of 29-7. If I'm wrong and things are a mess, then we should find a violation. So I'd like to hear more about it.
Well, I think that the fact that a request was made for what we know was quite an extensive body of correspondence, and what was provided was 2 days worth of email, and we found what could be the tip of the iceberg, and we've heard from staff that there's no disciplined way of keeping track of emails or searching them or knowing when you have. It's not going to look like an office with papers everywhere. It's going to look, it's going to be a phenomenon that we're all familiar with, those of us who get hundreds of emails all the time and we try to keep track of them. It requires an effort to figure out how do I organize these so I can find them in the future. And I don't think the supervisor's office and many of us, most of us are anywhere near being able to quickly grab something because it's hard to impose that kind of organization. But going forward, because virtually everything's going to be electronic, and we need to work this one out.
Well, then maybe my follow-up to Ms. Pizon, following on what Mr. Mink just said, could you tell us if you know what the search was that was conducted that yielded these documents and not others?
Sure.
I mean, I think that was very helpful to tell us about the search.
I'm just going to pull up. Again, this was in May, so I can't tell you definitively what the search was, but I will look back at the request.
And while you're looking, I do like the idea when someone does an electronic search like this to codify in the response letter, we search for these terms in this date range and we yielded blah. If we got these terms wrong, please let us know and we'll do another search. I like that. I think that's helpful. Why don't we think of that earlier?
So that may not always.
It may not, but it's decent. But
you have to be organized in the first place.
But it's something.
Yeah.
So looking back at the initial IDR, the request was any mention of the San Francisco Sunshine Ordinance Task Force or any mention of nominees to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. In thinking of how I would normally conduct a search, it would be for those search terms, Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, and then the names of all of the nominees that were being referred to for nominee at that meeting.
That should have yielded Member Wolf's email then.
I believe Member Wolf's email was signed Josh. So because when I personally conduct a search, it would be Josh Wolf.
Yeah, that's precisely the problem. I think at this time,
excuse me, I'm sorry. What's precisely the problem that someone searched Josh Wolf as opposed to Josh? I'm just, when you said that's precisely the problem.
The problem is that to identify the emails using the procedure she described, anyone who sent the email would have had to use the name that the supervisor's office had, and if they used anything differently, it wouldn't have appeared. Now, the office could have ensured that email would be identifiable in the future if it had been tagged in some way or put in a folder some way as having been part of the appointment process for the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
I think
otherwise it gets dropped.
Agreed. No, I think you're right in this specific case, but I guess I'm questioning. It seems to me that then you're creating a world where there's an unlimited number of folders that you have to create and figure out, well, this is about an oak leaf, and anyone who sends an email about oak leaf has to be on that. But you also have to then create. Right. I mean, it just. I think looking back, we can say like, oh, well, if it was done this way, then we would have yielded all of the emails. That doesn't necessarily, to me, mean that it was handled in an unprofessional manner. For us to Monday morning quarterback and say, well, if you would have done it that way, then this wouldn't have been a problem. Right? I'm not sure that they are equivalent to each other.
Okay, yeah, I see the point you're making. Vice Chair Highland.
Member Wolf, what is your email address that you use for that email?
The tail end of the domain is at joshwolf.net. So my name is there in the...
It should come up in the search. Yeah, I'm searching a similar name. I'm seeing it. So that should have come up.
All right, at this time, I'd like to move forward with this matter. So, Ms. Pizon, would you have 3 minutes to offer rebuttal.
Again, our office really tries to maintain professional business-like standards in terms of retention. Transparency is of high importance to us. As stated in the letter on December 24th, we took to heart the violations that were found and have made changes to our policies to make sure that we are referring people to, or we're doing the best to let people know where records are, for providing our own records and for making sure that requests are answered in a timely way. Again, we can always improve our standards, we can improve our organization, but we have been doing it in a good faith, best to our ability manner to maintain these records and provide them to the public. So I do appreciate the comments, and we are taking them to heart, and we are making sure that we can improve them for the future. So thank you.
Thank you. The complainant now has 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Let's go back a moment to the original complaint. They didn't search for the emails. That was factually established at the last meeting. You will recall that the narrative here is that my colleague, Mr. King, went into the supervisor's office several days after the request was made and said, "Oh, Mr. Peel hasn't received any request for his answer to his request." And I then get shot off an email from Supervisor Tang before she had even found the request on her fax machine, answering a different request and saying, "These are the emails that I have." You'll recall that I wrote back to her and said, "This seems a little scant, Supervisor." And her response was, "This is all I have." I then pointed out that another requester had received Mr. Frank's email about Mr. Wolf, and there was no acknowledgement from the supervisor as to what happened to that email. I am now extremely dismayed, Madam Chair, to find out that you had correspondence with the supervisor over your appointment, which would seem to me to be responsive to my request, but it was not released. I think when you boil this back down to the brass tacks from the beginning, it's about the fact that there was not a diligent search at all for records in response to this request. I think that Mr. Wolf's finding of the email proves it. I believe now, Madam Chair, that your statement goes to that conclusion, and clearly the email that was not produced from Terry Frank to the supervisor stated Mr. Wolf's name multiple times, and any search of the name Josh Wolf would have pulled up that email if it had existed and been available. The other thing I'd like to point out, very briefly, as I see the clock go, is that there seems to be judgments made now. There's the supervisor's aide is saying that there are judgments made as to what they believe, what a politician believes the public should know. I can tell you that that is an extremely dangerous precedent for the public. If records fall under the definition of a public record, there should be no subjective decision made to them as to the value to others, especially in a political realm. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I'd just like to say that Mr. Peel's last comment, I also was taken aback by that remark that, we determine in our office what information the public should have, what's important for the public to know about what we're doing. And I think the presumption should be that a member of the public on any given day might be interested in just about anything that comes into that inbox in the supervisor's office. So I think that's a larger matter, a very important matter. But I'd like to now ask for other comments and also a motion.
So, Chair Washburn, I just want to I interpreted that comment as saying that the supervisor's office determines what the supervisor's office keeps, as long as that it is also available at the board's office. Not that they just delete it and goes on forever. So I heard it a slightly different way. I just want to say that it wasn't that there was a determination of what is public information or what is not. It was a determination of what was important for the supervisor's office to keep, and that as long as that record was still available to the public through the clerk of the board. So that was just a different interpretation of what was said by the supervisor's legislative meeting.
At this time, is there a motion?
Well,
Member Hefner, yes.
Chair, I think that this is as good an opportunity as any to take up the issue that Clerk Wilson raised about codifying the best practices and policies, and if that would be best heard at committee or continue to a committee hearing, I would like to seize that opportunity if possible. And it would be a good opportunity to analyze existing procedures and policies, technological capabilities in various supervisors' offices, and coming up with those best practices.
I just have a question for Member Hefner. So I agree with you. I think it's an amazing opportunity to do that. My question is that should that be with the supervisor or should that be with Mr. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Mr. Ginning. It seems like it would be appropriate to be with Mr. Ginning, who then would I apologize. Mr. Ng, who can then share best practices with the whole board of supervisors. It doesn't seem like if Supervisor Tang's office, this doesn't seem like a particularly, to me, specific to Supervisor Tang. It was just an example that happened to come through her office. But it seems like it's an issue that we can't tag emails at all the board of supervisors. So that's kind of my...
I agree. That's my reticence to refer to the committee and have Supervisor Tang's supervisor aide come back. Ideally, we could have a retreat with all of the supervisors.
Right.
There you go.
Vice Chair Highland and then Member Wolf.
I was just going to say that ultimately the supervisor is head of that department, therefore I think we need to be aware of what's going on at this level. Yes, in the community, but they should also be named.
Member Wolf.
And I'm not sure whether anyone here knows at what level the email application is chosen, but is this an entire city-wide issue that should be addressed through the IT side of things as opposed to through the Board of Supervisors, or what is the best sort of direct contact for email in this city and how that's managed?
There's a commission or a committee, COIT, that deals directly with this. Member Pelpo?
Yeah, the Committee on Information Technology, or COIT, sort of oversees the information technology policies for the city, and a couple of years ago they decided to try to get off Lotus Notes and whatever the other one was Outlook, or whatever, and go to this Office 365 Outlook thing, which is a different thing, it's about Facebook, blah, blah, blah. But if I might, I think as it relates to this thing, I don't think that we need to go citywide right this second. I think if we engage with the supervisors, with Mr. Ring, about policies and procedures, about how the supervisors handle their correspondence and legislative files and email and all of that, that would be a good start. Let's get through that, and then if there are lessons that we can broaden, I think we can maybe think about that. But I guess where I'm going with this is I'm still not convinced that there is a 29-7 violation. I think if we just beef up the proposed order of determination and add, for example, that the task force also asks the clerk of the board through its records manager to bring policies and to discuss policies and procedures and training at the appropriate task force committee, et cetera, in the ways that Member Hefner talked about and that others have talked about. I think that does the trick. So I'm with something along these lines without finding further violations.
Member Rumble?
I agree with that. To me, if the records aren't deleted and you're using a widely available, commercially, standard email client, that's maintaining records in a sufficiently professional format that it should satisfy the ordinance. The issue here to me is whether or not an adequate search was conducted, not And I think the suggestion of documenting the search that people do is a fantastic one, and I think would help us a lot in evaluating these cases when they come before us. Instead of just like guessing whether or not there might be other records that exist, we can look at kind of objective criteria about the request that was made and whether or not the search that was conducted, in our view, is likely to yield a full response to that request. So, but again, I don't think it gets to the method that the record will maintain, but the search was done.
So I'm not hearing a motion to find a violation of 29-7. What I am hearing is an interest, it's really up to me, but I'm hearing that members are supportive of this going to education, outreach, and training, or compliance and amendments.
I'd be happy to do the compliance amendments either way, of course.
Yes, Ms. Fisher.
Why are we sending it to either education or compliance? I mean, did we go through this last month where Miss Diana came back and said, all right, we've admitted where we've gone wrong, and they sent us some letters and said what they're doing. We have a letter in here from Katie Tang's office telling us what they're doing.
Well,
it's a question, it's not rhetorical.
Yeah, the issue is that we have evidence that what they did wasn't sufficient to identify the information that was requested. So we have evidence that we have information that was not found doing what they did. So doing what they did was not sufficient, either because of an inadequate search or because the records weren't kept and they were deleted, or because they couldn't be found because there weren't adequate tags or. So I think that this probably is it's an issue for this office. It's also a broader issue. So I think.
So Chair Washburn, I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to bifurcate this into two things. If this is an issue of hiding records, deleting records, not properly keeping records, that's one thing. But this sort of amorphous, we couldn't find things, the search terms were kind of limited. I mean, stuff like that's going to happen. I mean, this Kizan, why am I having so much trouble with your name? Kizan, I got it. Even admitted, hey, sometimes things fall through the cracks. I mean, that all of us do searches all the time on things, and I don't see anything willful in this at all. Well, people with their hands up, so.
We're not sending this to the Ethics Commission for willful violation. We are sending it to committees so we can troubleshoot and figure out how we can find information better. We know that our appointments generated a lot of correspondence with Supervisor Tang's office and President Tang's office, and nonetheless, a lot of that just did not appear, and it didn't. And we found other violations. I mean, it wasn't produced in the first place, and so forth. So. Member Hutner.
And I think to clarify, the accidents happen. That is precisely where we step in to say, here are the best practices that you should adhere to minimize the possibility of accidents. And again, this is not about just Supervisor King's office. And what I think we should probably do, what makes the most sense, is to adhere to a schedule that Mr. Ng can work with us on to help, work together to develop those best practices and policies. It's not about punishing anybody at this point. It's about formulating best practices going forward.
So, just a couple more comments, then we need to move on. Member David.
Yeah, I just want to point out that we found violations for two things. We found violations for lateness of response to an IDR, right? And we found, what was the sit down? Just escaped me. What was the second violation?
Failure to refer to the proper record.
Failure to refer to other places that might have the information. The letter that Supervisor Tang's office sent us on December 24th addresses head-on those two violations. So I am totally supportive of us working with Mr. Ng to create to come up with best practices. But the two violations that we found Supervisor Tang's office have been addressed. And by sending those, it seems like we're doing a runaround of our own findings. That emails might have been erased, so we need to bring Supervisor Tang into a subcommittee. That's all. We found violations on two things. IVR didn't respond and didn't believe, and if I remember correctly, it was 24 hours late, the IVR request. 24 hours. And in her letter, she says that in all future correspondences, she will advise that there may be additional records at the clerk's board, with the clerk of the board. So I once again, I don't see how bringing Supervisor Tang in front of a subcommittee to address those two violations is necessary.
Member Pilhel, and then we're going to move on.
Okay, and I'm prepared to make a motion if that's useful. As I suggested, I am not 100%, but probably 99% satisfied with Supervisor Tang's response. I'm trying to have us accept Ms. Rain's invitation and move it into the procedures training policy arena. If there are things that we've learned from that are applicable to Supervisor Tang's office, absolutely, and if they're applicable to the rest of them, so be it. There were already violations found last time. I don't want to wordsmith this right now, but is a motion to adopt and order determination along these lines with systematic language based on our discussion today in order, and so I will so move.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So I so move to adopt and order determination along these lines with language added that reflects our discussion about policies, procedures, training relative to email searches and best practices. And we can wordsmith what that is in the coming days, but it's not finding additional violations as to address this up and get that. That's the motion.
Vice Chair Hyland.
I think we should take a stab at putting those words so we know we're voting on and trying to do it on precise.
Okay.
Rather than big enough.
And so the task force, something to the effect that the task force accepts the invitation from the clerk of the board's office to engage in developing policies, procedures, and training relative to email management, retention, and searches, and documentation of email searches in response to public records requests. I mean, we may do some other stuff, but that's the sort of substantive piece to have. Is that okay? That's my motion. Thank you. Are you second? I'll second that. Hey!
Is there any members? All right, at this time, I'd like your public comment on this motion.
If I could suggest 6721D, because the requester said 2 days after he made the IDR, he went into the office and asked for help, and they didn't supply it to him.
Are there any additional public comments?
Yes, Peter Warfield. Again, I'm not party to this, but it seems to me that you're rather discounting the failure to find something fairly obvious. And Mr. Peel's testimony that when he did go into the office and said this seems a little bit paltry, he was told, that's all I've got. So it doesn't seem to me that there's any contradictory evidence to the conclusion that has to be drawn is that they weren't really very interested in doing a serious or professional professional search for Mr. Peel. I'm a little bit surprised that you seem to be assuming what a terribly complicated and difficult job there is here. Now, it's true that email makes correspondence probably more voluminous than it used to be, but there are whole books on filing. There used to be the professional filing clerks, huge companies like GM. They manage to file things. Perhaps you want to get a cataloger from the library to give you advice as to how they keep 2 million plus items in the catalog filed and presumably in order and findable. But I think the chair has made some particular points about folders. I myself sometimes, when it's important, resend to myself something that someone has sent me with a subject line that has essentially tags. SOTF, appointment, Josh Wolf, genius. And that way, I can search for those things if I'm looking for any of those search terms. Whatever the fashion is that they use, it doesn't seem to be professional. That, we heard that it sounded like a very haphazard searching. The supervisor's office didn't know what searches were used. I don't think keyword searching is a very good method of searching anyway, for precisely the reasons that the chair outlined. Keywords can often miss the key subject. In olden times, I would imagine, and maybe you need to go back to olden times people, that there would be a folder on Sunshine Ordinance Task Force appointments, and that's where all that correspondence would be found. It would be in a physical folder, and something comparable can and should be set up, and not left to the completely haphazard, apparently, searching that evidently was done. There's also something, the knowledge and the expertise of the staff. Presumably there are people who've been working in the supervisor's office, and that also needs to be applied. That intelligence has to be applied to a search. The requirement to maintain in a professional and business-like manner all documents and correspondence, I think doesn't sound to me like it has been met. Thank you.
Thank you. For additional public comment?
Good afternoon, members. How are you today? Bruce Wolf. A few things. First, regarding the IDR, if the information is needed to exonerate someone at a certain deadline, just 1 hour definitely makes a difference. 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days after the deadline, unless they did not ask for an extension that's allowed, 24 hours, that's required. With regards to retention, the task force has ruled on this exact issue several times before in consultation and in agreement with the task force legal counsel. So I would urge you to look at your history instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. This is not a unique case. This has come up time and time again. Such in the case that in the matter of Wooding versus Reckitt Park et al., we were able to retrieve backups from emails. So if something did get deleted, there's backups for everything, especially if they're using Office 365, because everything is stored on a central server. And if everything disappeared, they'd have to have a backup to bring it back anyway. It's just standard practice, especially in such a huge establishment as the city. And it also is in the case earlier of against the Public Utilities Commission around emails sent to and from Cal ISO, which was on the peaker plants. You can review that. If you're not specifically familiar with how search engines work and strings, I would suggest that using common sense in this area is not applicable. Filtered searches, such as what Outlook has in it, can break down the email headers, to, from, subject, and all kinds of other metadata. And that said, it's really incumbent upon the city's professional tech support to provide ample training for search specifically for public disclosure requests. Plus, they could be actually implored to help find the information, actually do that actual search themselves if it seems to be too difficult or the person trying to do the search is unable to find it. It's really incumbent upon the city to find the information and not just do, just a rudimentary search and call it a day. Okay, if it's known and there's some conversation that this information does exist, then I think it's important to take the extra step. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment?
Thomas Picarello, the clerk's office wasn't found guilty of violating any sunshine ordinance on this matter. Why do you want to now bring them into the discussion and excluding Supervisor Tang? That is beyond me. Supervisor Tang violated the sunshine ordinance. Her office needs to be involved in the discussion, not the clerk's office. Supervisors are required by law to keep their records for 2 years. Both state law and local law mandate that. None of you asked the supervisor's aide what her record retention policy is. So I'm disappointed, especially by the 2 members of the bar, for not asking that question. That's what's in front of you. That's what should have been in front of you tonight. Whether or not Supervisor Tang deliberately destroyed the emails that was sent to her office. That was the issue in front of you. And you didn't discuss that at all. Your suggestion now that you will have a discussion with the clerk's office about record retention is ridiculous. Supervisor Tang needs to be in front of one of the committees, either it's education or compliance amendments, and tell you what her record retention policy is. Is it complying with state and local law? Yes or no? If it's not, then you need to instruct her what the law is and what her requirements mandate her to do. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sunshine Ordinance. I imagine that if we weren't under martial law and we really had the United States Constitution that was the law of the land, number one, there wouldn't be a need for all these lawyers, and there wouldn't be a need for a sunshine ordinance, which is a good effort with a good concept and good intention within a corrupt system. So I'm here to offer you some real sunshine. I'm almost in a good mood for the first time in a long time, because I know that at this moment, that while the bankers and their lawyers are pretty much giving everybody the big middle finger, that at this moment, almost 200,000 in the West Coast of law enforcement, truckers, veterans, and labor have all gotten off the fence, and they stopped and withheld their mortgages and rents. Now, who's that going to hurt besides these goddamn bankers? The ones that put all this misery on us, all for the last 150 years. And where has this all been?
You're talking to the motion.
Pardon me?
You're talking to the motion that's before us.
Well, whatever the motion is, the problem will be solved by getting the bankers off our back, and I'm inviting you all, those that are listening, to simply stop paying your mortgages and rents, and know that hundreds of thousands of others are doing the same thing. Because of all the Fed's taxes, let me just finish this last thing, I'll be done. They take 72% of all the monies from California that they steal nationwide, and then we end up begging for nickels back from the Feds. That's ridiculous.
Sir,
it's time for us.
Thank you very much.
Well, you don't seem to be very appreciative. You're cutting off my time. And since you don't know what I was going to finish with,
Excuse me, you are not addressing the matter before us directly.
I would have finished that.
Or even indirectly. So I'd like to move on now. Is there anyone else?
That's not very kind or fair. You're making an assumption about how I'm going to finish my last minute.
Is there anyone else here that would like to offer public comment on the motion?
There's no answer to the system. It's time to change.
Excuse me.
You're excused.
At this point, Mr. Evans, would you call the roll on the motion, please?
Yes, can we repeat the motion?
On the motion to accept an invitation from the clerk of the board's office engaged in developing policies and procedures for searches for IDCs. Sound correct?
Actually, the motion is to adopt an order of determination that includes language to that effect.
And on that motion, Member Rowe?
Aye.
Ronald, aye. Member Wolf?
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Member Bilbao?
Aye.
Bilbao, aye. Member Hebner?
Aye.
Hebner, aye. Member David?
Aye.
David, aye. Member Fisher?
Aye.
Fisher, aye. Member Hinsey?
Aye.
Hinsey, aye. Vice Chair Hyland?
Aye.
Hyland, aye. And Chair Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye. We have 8 ayes.
All right, I'd like the order of determination will be revised, and I'd like for Vice Chair Hyland has been reviewing the initial review of the orders of determination anyway, and I would like for this to go to EOT, which she chairs. I would also like to see Supervisor Tang's office be asked to attend this meeting, because this is the case that brought the issue before us. Yes, she did write a letter addressing the various concerns that we had, but it was not detailed in any way. I'd like to hear more about her office's plans to be able to respond more completely and in a more timely way with public records requests. So this will go to EOT. At this time, we should move to general public comment. Would you call that item, please?
So item number 5 is general public comment. Members of the public may address the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force on matters that are within the jurisdiction of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force but are not on today's agenda.
Is there anyone here to offer general public comment? The gentleman who was here before, this would have been his time to speak.
I just want to give an update about the San Francisco Arts Commission since the last time I was in front of you guys. Their website has been down 4 times this month for a total of 10 days. Each time it was down, I sent an email to the Commission Secretary explaining that it was down. I got only one response from her, which was to refer me right back to their website. I went to an advisory committee meeting last month. These are people that screen street artists, so it's a policy body. There was no announcement of the date, time, and location on the onset of the meeting. There was no public notice to the entrance of the room. My written comment was not included in their minutes. I sent an email to Rebecca Krill, the CEO, about this and didn't receive a response. On January 2nd, Harold Lazar came out to the street with a small camera in his hands. I videotaped him as he spent 15 minutes aggressively photographing me and my stand. He shoved me in a panel of my earrings, which was on videotape. I filed a police report and showed the tape to someone in this building. I was able to get Rebecca Krill on the phone, who said she would find out about it and send me an email. She didn't. And Member Hebner, at one meeting you asked what is going on with the San Francisco Arts Commission. What's going on is that there are no internal controls over there. There's no policing of anyone within that department. Howard Lazar has only a yearly performance review, and it's not open to the public. No performance reviews are. The street artist meetings are few and far between, and the 3 minutes that a person would have for public comment is not enough to speak about ongoing issues within that program. They don't take the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force seriously, and the 16 times I went to the full commission meetings and explained to them the codes they were violating, they laughed when I spoke about it. And then there was the compliance meeting of the 16th of this month, which was kind of shocking. There was no one from the Arts Commission appeared. They said a somewhat hacked up forward email from the Commission Secretary which didn't address the order of determination. And in my view, they're just basically laughing at you. Whatever little progress has been made has been met with a lot of resistance on their part.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment on matters not before us?
Thomas Piccarello, I promise not to talk about banks. But I do want to talk about your new policy hearing complaints by your committees, whether it's the education or the compliance. I see a lot of problems with that setup. It's ambiguous as to what happens after the subcommittee decides the issue. It goes back to the task force, but you have like three options. You either accept it, you hear it de novo, or you schedule it at a later date. Well, that causes problems. The other issue, I think more importantly though, is the members on the committee that hear the issue, do they sit as a member of the full task force and hear it again? I see there's problems there because you've already decided the issue. So then you're going to hear it a second time. And to me, that's a denial of due process for either the complainant or the respondent. It is. Think about it. It's a bad idea. And it's also, you're not saving any time. You're just hearing the matters twice now instead of once. So instead of hearing the case for 90 minutes, you're going to hear it for 2 hours and a half. Yeah. So that's 180. That's 180 minutes or 150 minutes. So you're not saving any time. But what you are doing, though, more seriously, is you're depriving either the complainant or the respondent due process of law. First, you have 2 or 3 members hearing the case. I don't like that at all. And then it's ambiguous as what you're going to do once you decide the case. You're giving the full task force 3 options. Who then decides what option? Is it the full task force, including the members that already heard the case at the committee, at the education and compliance? Obviously, you haven't thought these things through. You created an idea, and I give you credit for the ambition of trying to reduce your calendar, but the present situation is not reducing your calendar. It's causing greater backlogs. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment?
I just say, why don't we just see how it goes on item 8?
Sorry?
Let's just see how it goes tonight. First time.
We're feeling our way around this, and we're trying to do what we can to make sure people get their cases heard more quickly, and there are a lot of choice points along the way for the complainant, actually. So at this time, after this next matter, I'd like to schedule a longish break for us, but let's move ahead with item number 4, please.
Item number 4 is file number 14095, a complaint filed by Bob Manhold against Supervisor Malia Cohen, Supervisor Scott Wiener, and former Supervisor David Chu, the Board of Supervisors, for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sections 67.7 and 67.15a, and California Government Code Sections 54954.2 and 54954.3 for failing to provide adequate opportunity for public comments at land use and economic development committee meetings of September 15, 2014 and September 29, 2014, and the government audit and oversight committee meeting of September 11, 2014.
Before we hear the case on its merits, we need to determine whether we have jurisdiction. None of the parties dispute jurisdiction except former Supervisor David Chu is no longer on the Board of Supervisors, so I'm not. You say, Paula, what do we do about that?
I think the most efficient way to do this is just to find jurisdiction over the individual committees that they were parts of. A notice was provided to the clerk of the board, so I think that's sufficient for those committees as well. I don't know if former President Chu sent a representative for today's hearing. Did?
I don't know.
Oh. Well, he didn't contest jurisdiction, but I don't know. Is there a representative?
I think Mr. Eaton from the clerk's office may have.
So I'm going to speak on behalf of the board.
Okay. I think that we can proceed just finding jurisdiction over the committees, saying that we no longer have jurisdiction over former Supervisor Chu. And the other supervisors, it seems like, have representatives here, so they can speak on behalf of those individual supervisors.
Thank you. So, do I have a motion to find jurisdiction?
I'm sorry, I'm just confused as to what we're fighting. Is now Assembly Member Chu, is he being removed as the named defendant in this? Or is he not? As a respondent, sorry.
Well, we don't have jurisdiction over him.
So I think that we need to remove his name since I did not have jurisdiction over him.
Madam Chair?
Member Pilkholm?
Well, I was going to move that we find jurisdiction with respect to Supervisors Cohen and Weiner and add the Board of Supervisors so that we can deal with the two committees and the manner in which the committees heard this. Otherwise, it seems to me that the GAO part of this falls away. And if we think that there may be an issue there, then I think it's important to ask the Board of Supervisors, and I don't think that's outside the scope, and Wilson's here to speak to that for the Board. So I would, is that clear enough? And we'll hear from the parties.
Well, it's not the whole Board of Supervisors.
Well, okay, it's the Board of Supervisors, but in this case, it's...
And it's not. Bringing all the Board of Supervisors into this is not.
Okay, it's not my intent. I'm just saying that it's... I don't think Wilson's representing the committees, so that's what I'm saying, the board. And if we find a violation, we can find a violation against a committee of the board. The lesser includes...
Well, I think DC Acola said that we could name the supervisors who are currently serving and the committees against the committees that are part of this. So,
but I'm not sure that Supervisor Kim, for example, was properly named, and so that's the struggle I'm having. Do you think we can address Supervisor Kim, for example, as a potential respondent or find a violation here?
Supervisor Kim?
Yeah, as a member of the Land Use and Economic Development Committee. Supervisor Reed is a member of the GAO Committee. Supervisor Tang is a member of the GAO Committee. I mean, we need some guidance here.
What I think we should do is find jurisdiction over the committee as a whole, because the clerk of the board was noticed on it. I think that's sufficient. I don't understand why you're. What are you trying? What are you trying to get at here? You want to find jurisdiction over the entire clerk of the board rather than just the individual committees?
Not the entire clerk.
I don't know what you're doing.
I don't know what I'm doing. Somebody.
I think we should find.
Draw the motion. Somebody else try it. I'm not. This isn't working. I'm not doing it.
Member Ronald, would you put forward a motion?
I don't know what the total directing
That's I'm struggling.
DC Acola said, he suggested that we find jurisdiction with respect to the named committees. Okay?
Right, but it's weird though because and I think what Member Philbell was getting at is there are members of the committee that aren't named in the complaint, but were on the committee.
And this happens with, by the time we get in the case, sometimes the members have changed. So
right, that's true.
What's our precedence on that?
Member Wolf?
And then aren't the committees about to change again? Yeah. So it seems like we should name the actual members that were involved in the committees and not the committees themselves.
All right.
In which case we lose jurisdiction
because we got it
over Supervisor Chu, former Supervisor Chu, and the specific allegation regarding the Government Audit and Oversight Committee.
Maybe I'll try again with Maybe I'll try again with my Supervisor Cohen, Supervisor Weiner, and Board of Supervisors for the moment, and if we decide to find a violation, then we can inquire further about the committees and the individuals. I think we can get at the board. I'm not trying to get at the whole board, but it's the board as it relates to the committees. I just don't want to name some questions here without Supervisors having been notified.
Maybe I'm oversimplifying this. I was going for the simple solution, but is there anything against us just looking at this as, let's go 2 out of 3. Let's go with what we've got. Let's go with Supervisors Cohen and Weiner. And due to circumstances, we cannot include former supervisor did issues, so let's go forward with what we have now. And not include all these other people, all these groups, whatever. This is who the complainant has brought. This is what he said. Circumstances beyond his control. One of them is no longer there, so let's just move forward with what we've got and forget about all this other issue.
And we know full well that we may add people down the road. We do that all the time. So let's get started. I have a motion to find jurisdiction. Stated the way.
Motion to find jurisdiction over Supervisor Weiner and Supervisor Cohen.
All right. Is there a second? Member Popel. Okay. Is there?
I will second, but I also want to inquire of Member David, is it your intent in making this motion that the GAO allegation falls away? Or is that...
I am just finding jurisdiction. I'm not looking at the substance of the case. There's two. If I read this correctly, there are, like Member Fisher, there are 3 different people named, of which we have jurisdiction over 2 out of those 3 currently. And I don't know how to resolve the fact that we don't have, that's who we have jurisdiction over.
Vice Chairman.
Chair Washington, if I can help. I believe the CAO said that the clerk was noticed on this, and therefore, by definition, the GAO was also noticed. So if you could just find the 2 supervisors plus the GAO, would that suffice?
I think so. I think we're fine moving forward, and I think the clerk sent a representative also, Mr. Ng, correct?
Right. All right. So
I don't think there's any due process concerns because they clearly sent someone who was prepared to speak today. And even though Supervisor Chu is no longer a member of the board, there is still an allegation that took place at a city policy body meeting. I think we should hear it.
All right, so our motion right now is to find jurisdiction on the matter of Mr. Plantholt versus Supervisor Weiner, Supervisor Cohen, and the GAO. All right. Public comment? Yes, at this time, I'd like to hear public comment on this. Maybe
I can't reconcile.
Well, I'm not the one who made that comment. I made that motion. It was Member Hyman. I don't think it was a second.
Yeah, it was you. Well, I just suggested a friendly amendment, but after.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. The second has been withdrawn. All right. Do we have a new motion?
New motion to find jurisdiction over Supervisors Weiner, Cohen, and the GAO.
Do I have a second? Thank you. All right. At this time, public comment on the motion before us.
You can't really change the motion for determination based upon what the complaint is. That's what you've accepted. That's what's on the agenda. Okay? You should move forward, and if you find that you want to exclude one of the respondents, then you do so in your final motion of determination. Don't do it at the beginning. So I want to also appeal to all the legal counsels that have passed the bar in the room to please, I don't quite understand why I lost my train of thought here. I'm sorry. Another point I want to just address is it says Board of Supervisors. Is this for the whole Board of Supervisors? In the
complaint, or is that just a typo in the agenda? And I remembered my other point.
Which is?
The other point is these laws were made for people, not bodies. So people make these decisions. If you bring a violation against a body, there's no enforcement. So you have to name people. So I would urge legal counsels to keep focus on that these violations are to be against people, and the complaints are against people, not whole bodies. So I would urge you to focus on that. Thank you.
To the chair.
Vice Chairman.
In the interest of time, I'm going to withdraw my motion so we get to the correct motion, and then that's on the comment at that point.
All right. So, Member Ronald, Member Hebner, any ideas on how we can move forward and hear this case
Let me
in the
ask,
next 5 minutes?
who specifically was emailed with notice of the complaint?
And who was named too? Because in the memo, it says former Supervisor David Chu of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors Land Use and Economic Development Committee and the Government Audit and Oversight Committee. And I can't tell if that's the Government Audit.
That's because he was named for his part in both of those committees. Separate hearings for both of those committees.
So it was his name and not a whole committee that was named.
In the complaint, in the actual complaint, it was 3 individuals that were named.
Okay. And that's okay. And that to me means we should just go with Wiener and probably
Would you put that in the form of a motion, please?
I move to find jurisdiction over Supervisor Wiener and Supervisor Coe.
Second.
All right. Now, public comment on this motion.
Peter Warfield here. I think it's very troubling to hear that because one of the members of a committee flew the coop, got into a getaway car and left town, he's going to be left off scot-free. If you were to take this as a general rule, that would mean that at the end of anybody's term, in any office, they could proceed with a series of illegalities and no accountability whatsoever. I don't understand what deputy city attorneys claim about not having jurisdiction over David Chu. It's not like you're the parole officer or the jailer. You don't have, what is your level of jurisdiction in the first place? You can find that at a certain time in a certain place, something happened that did or did not violate the law. That's your job. I don't know what further jurisdiction you've got. And under your formulation, hey, it's a free ride for illegalities for anybody who's about to change or leave office. Also, that would mean any delay, any change, any new appointment would get them off scot-free. I don't think that's appropriate. There was or was not a violation at this time. And this isn't so long ago. It's not as though you've had some lengthy delays. We're talking about September of 2014. It seems to me it's up to you to determine whether or not there was a violation, as alleged. What you can do about it, I mean, you never were in a position to have jurisdiction over David Chu and what, haul him into someplace, into the Hooskow? I don't think so. You determine what you determine as to what happened, and then I think deal with the consequences afterwards as to what you can or can't do. So I think that it is appropriate to take the complainant's full complaint and to include all of the violators, if that's what they are, or alleged violators, and go forward with your determination based on the facts. So I certainly support the portion that's been proposed I would ask you to add back in the other named party, which is David Chu, as requested by the complainant. Thanks.
Is there additional public comment?
Speaker Mello, yeah, I agree with the previous speaker. If you do have jurisdiction over Assemblyman Chu, there's no legal basis to exclude him. You do have jurisdiction on him, and he's not here, so what? If you ask the right questions of the other committee members, you'll know whether or not Supervisor Chu, at that time, now Assemblyman Chu, violated the Sunshine Ordinance. So he should be named in this matter. He's not here, so what? If you ask the right questions, you'll know whether or not he violated the Sunshine Ordinance. About putting on substantial amendments and then not allowing public comment. Supervisor Chu's been already named in violation of the Sunshine Ordinance on a similar issue. If some of you can recollect that. So I oppose your motion excluding Assemblyman Chu. You have jurisdiction. Leave him in. Thank you.
Is there any additional public comment on the matter? Seeing none, if we could, without objection, find jurisdiction so we can move forward. Okay, appreciate your patience with this, Mr. Plansel. Yes, you have 5 minutes.
Was there a vote on jurisdiction?
Without objection.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm Bob Blanchfold. Regrettably, right before the meeting, I found there's a city public document not disclosed to me. I need a continuance. And I will state briefly this, knowing it cuts into my presentation time. I wanted to look at the file of the public document because my complaint is so lengthy. I didn't want to print it out. I find there's a December 30th memo sent to you folks. I didn't get it. It's 10 pages long. On page 81, as listed in your packet, there's some questions that might assist in determining facts. There's certain laws cited in this 10-page memo that I did not make in my complaint. My point is, not only myself, but people who came to support this, we're underprepared for failure to provide that. I initially got an email months ago showing me a October 16th memo. That was in an attachment. Subsequent to that, the email I got simply said, you're on the agenda. There was no attachment in any subsequent email. This is a new document. This is new information. This is analysis I and the others that came to support this do not have. I found this out shortly before the meeting. I talked to your acting administrator. He said it's posted on the website. Why should I always have to go to the website if the initial communication has a city attorney analysis as an attachment? Because it was right before the meeting, I didn't have time to raise this with you, Madam Chair. So can you stop my time and you folks consider this request for a continuance?
All right,
Thank you.
It was 329, not 322.
It's all right, but I don't think this will count for your time.
No, this won't at all count for your
We'll
time.
sort through this. DCA follow-up. You prepared the memo last week. You don't normally send the memo to complainants. You send it to Victor.
I send it to Victor, and then Victor sends out the entire agenda packet and emails all concerned parties.
Okay. So you can't speak to whether or not it was sent to Bob. Excuse me, Mr. Blanchard.
I cannot.
And Derek, Mr. Clerk, you can't speak to it.
I cannot speak to that. I do know we received this information earlier today.
Okay. I mean, Mr. Blanchard, this is normally just a memo that informs us it's available. I don't know. It should have been provided to you. If it wasn't, it should have been, yes. I don't know that not having seen it is going to really prejudice your position. I think
I do.
Okay. If that's the case, then, I guess I'd have you prepared to continue the matter. I think that we've got enough to go on. But whatever.
I think we traditionally respect the request of the complainant for a continuance.
Well, so I just want to be clear. I want to make sure I understand. You're asking. I'm sorry, through the chair. You're asking for a continuance because you were not aware of the the city attorney's memo to the Sunshine Task Force.
Right, because that forms the basis of your thinking. And maybe I have a different view. Maybe I think that analysis is skewed or incomplete. And so if I don't know about what's forming the basis for your thinking, I'm advocating a disadvantage.
Okay, so I just want to point out that the district attorneys, the city attorneys, excuse me, that's his opinion to us. It's not necessarily informing, it's just sharing his opinion. I would like to ask the respondents if they are willing to agree to any continuance before I'm willing to consider that.
And I'll just clarify that I'm not sure that it constitutes opinion. It's essentially excerpts of other documents. And did you receive the October 16, 2014 letter?
That is the only one I got.
Okay, so the memorandum, the way I read it, is largely just summaries of the underlying. I mean, I understand that there's an inherent framing there, but this is excerpts from documents that have already been submitted to all parties.
Again, though, it forms somewhat the basis of your thinking, of your questioning, and there's statements, questions that might assist in determining facts. That's guiding you in your thinking, legal issues, and also citations of law that I did not make in my initial complaint. So those laws also are forming the basis of your thinking that I'm unaware of.
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Highland.
Sure, Mr. Blackwell, just to give you an idea of our relationship with the city attorney, he's there. He's not our city attorney. He's there to advise this body. In many cases, we disagree with their opinion, as is our right and our charter. And the additional case law or precedents that he's citing often will help the complainant who maybe is not as educated on sunshine law as yourself or other people. So if anything, it's probably would add to your, because we may find additional violations in addition to what you've already brought to light. That's the purpose of that memo, is to kind of give us a framework and to make sure we kind of catch everything in addition to what you brought up. So I would urge you perhaps to consider that we're not biased by it, but that it's assisting us. You've got your team here. If you'd like to move forward, that's great. If you'd like to do continuance, I'm guessing that the chair would probably.
I'd like to say, as the chair, I'm not an attorney, and so I have to say that I read the memos, and you're absolutely, I am a cognitive psychologist, so I understand what influences our thinking, and so I know, and I can say that reading this does frame my opinion of the case to some respect, and then I dig further and off, and I ask questions. But you're absolutely right. For some of us, this memo can lead us off in a certain direction, suggest a line of questioning, shape our view of it, and it's a point very well taken. So like I said before, our tradition has been to defer to a complainant who wants a continuance in a matter like this, where this memo came out December 30th. He hasn't seen it. He has people here who have arrived with the intention of advocating for him. So I would urge you to consider a continuance.
May I ask just a couple of questions? Sure. I'm sorry, Mr. Plano, have you been before this task force before?
Yes.
Yes. And I didn't.
Mr. Plano served on and chaired this task force.
Thank you. There you go. So are you? I guess it seems to me that you seem to be very knowledgeable with this works, and that it shouldn't be surprising to you that we received a memo from the city attorney. Like, I'm a little bit like this.
You're asking, am I playing a double game?
No.
Essentially.
Well,
so let me give you history. I left the task force in 2002. At that time, there was not a situation as arose here where a complainant didn't get the information. Sometimes it is faxed off to the person. So this is a new process to me that only the task force gets it. And yes, I hear it's posted, but here again, on December 30th, what if I'm going away for a New Year's holiday and I come back and do my regular business this week? Am I supposed to constantly monitor the website in case something comes up, as opposed to the initial notification, you're on the agenda, here's the city attorney October memo? That was, to me, a failure of positive communication from the city towards me.
All right, at this time, do I have is there a motion to continue this matter?
Motion to continue.
Yeah, we should hear from the respondents. You're right, yes.
But they want to get rid of it. I mean, if they say no, do it now. Am I put at a disadvantage for being underprepared because they say they want to get rid of it?
Oh, I just explained our tradition, so but I would like to hear from the other side.
Thanks for hearing me. I did want to bring to your attention that on January 2nd, 2015, at 2:33 p.m., Victor Young did send an email with Mr. Pinehold in the to subject line, in the to line, notifying that the agenda packet for the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force scheduled today is available online, and provided a link to all the contents. And that's when I was first notified as well. So. I do have that email available. Unfortunately, it's not in print format, so I can't show it. But it's not a packet. It's timestamped January 2nd at 2:33 p.m.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, members.
Sure. Andrea Bresser, Supervisor Cohen's office. We received the city attorney's memo probably within that same correspondence from the clerk's office as well as a component of the packet materials. So I don't think that we have an objection to a continuance if that's particularly what the complainant wants. But to the extent that you did want to move forward, both myself and Andres Powers from Supervisor Wiener's office are here and prepared tonight to address the substantive issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Plant.
If I might clarify, yes, I admit I did get an emailed memo saying you're on the agenda, and here's the link to the full packet. I already knew that. There was nothing to call my attention that there's a new document, that there's new information, there's something different from what I'd been sent earlier. That's, I think, part of the communication disconnect. Because the packet itself, it's incredibly long. And I know that from previous. So if I'm going to open that link, how many hours am I going to wait, for the thing to download? Seriously, there needs to be some more positive communication than just, here's a link to a massive packet.
Thank you. So that is something we could, in the future, make sure that complainants are clear about the communication they're receiving. So if Mr. Evans, if you let Victor know, Victor's been masterful at getting procedures in place, and this is a good thing to do for sure.
I'll definitely make note of that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's added to the template of what he does. So, good catch. All right. Do I have a motion to continue this?
Motion to continue.
Sorry, second. Public comment on the motion to continue?
Just want to notate that on the website that the package is not there, just the announcement of the agenda. I haven't been able to find it anywhere.
Click the top left corner. It'll take you to full packet.
There's a live link up at the top left.
In the responsive for the smaller phones, not there. Just so you know.
Yeah, the agenda is only interactive on some web instantiations, and sometimes it just acts as a static PDF file. So that's definitely something that is device specific.
Okay. That's good to know. All right, any other public comments?
Peter Warfield, first of all, you are certainly correct that it's been tradition, and I think it's in your procedures, that a complaint continuance and is basically granted it. I thought I heard somebody say that the timestamp on the sending of the city attorney's advice letter to Mr. Planthold was January 2nd?
No.
That's what Mr. Dean said.
Yes, he said
Said that there was an email.
That was the email from Victor.
An email from Victor saying that the packet is up and here's a link to it. The memo was created, or finalized, I guess, December 30th.
So January 2nd is not. Well, the public hearing procedure says that under C in your procedure says that the complainant or respondent shall receive a written notice of the specific issues that shall be before the SOTF for a hearing, and they shall be advised to submit any evidence no later than 5 working days prior to the hearing. I think it's normal to have the city attorney's opinion letter as part of that package so that you can respond as a complainant to the whole package, including what the respondents say and what the city attorney says. And I think that Mr. Planthold's sense of being blindsided by the city attorney's letter is something that should be respected. And it certainly is very weighty in not only your decisions, but in anybody who's reading the packet as well. And basically, I think his request should be granted. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there additional public comments?
Yes, Thomas Picarello, strongly support your motion for a continuance. I'm a little troubled by the extent of cross-examination of the complainant as to why he wants the continuance. Victor just simply forgot to send the legal memorandum to him. As many times as I've been in front of you on my cases, Mr. Young always sends me the legal memorandum a week in advance. So Victor didn't accomplish that task. But the burden should not be on the complainant. So you're showing good sense, at least on this issue tonight, by granting the motion for a continuance. One other comment, though, to suggest that you don't rely on the city memorandums and formulating your opinions, I think is not accurate. To any of you that actually read any packet material before you listen to evidence in any of your cases, the legal memorandum is probably the only thing you read in the packet. So it's a crucial document. You do rely on it, and if Victor inadvertently did not give it to the complainant, certainly you ought to grant the motion for continuance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment? Seeing none, Mr. Evans, would you call the roll on this matter, please?
And on the motion, Member Rummel.
Aye.
Rummel, aye. Member Winston.
Aye.
Winston, aye. Member Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Member Football.
Aye.
Football, aye. Member Hebner.
Aye.
Hebner, aye. Member David.
No.
David, no. Member Fisher.
Aye.
Fisher, aye. Member Hinsey.
Aye.
Hinsey, aye. Vice Chair Hyland.
Aye.
Hyland, aye. And Chair Washburn.
Aye.
Washburn, aye. Motion passes.
All right, at this time, I'd like to call excuse me.
Just a quick
Ms. Blackman, yes.
Next item, the complainant is not here, I don't believe. So I'm just wondering if you're going to be hearing it without the complainant, if I need to wait.
Excellent question.
Let's call him before we go on break if he's not here.
Hear it now, and then take our break. There we go.
Well, okay, I was going to suggest we have a 20-minute break, but I think we should resolve this. And so, Ms. Blackman, you're requesting a continuance on this. Are we going to go ahead and hear it?
She's just here. Where's the complainant?
Okay.
Through the chair, I believe we used to say, is the complainant here? Yes or no? Is the respondent here? So I'm simplifying again, if the complainant's not here.
We just, well, we find jurisdiction and, okay.
Through the chair, I think we should
President Harlan?
hear this case when we hear. And if the complainant's here, they're here, then on, and we go.
All right.
I'll be leaving.
Excuse me, why don't we wait 2 more minutes?
No, I mean, if you want me to wait for 20 minutes, that sounded like you wanted me to wait. Okay, I'm sorry.
I think what we're saying is, if the complainant isn't here, if we're going to hear it, we'll hear it. And if you want to be here at the
when you return, you will hear it.
But that we would hear it in the absence of the complainant. They don't have to be here.
Right.
We've done that.
But we would like to take a break now. So at 6:30, we will call.
Offer a suggestion.
Okay, yes, please. Why is everything so hard tonight?
Can we just? He's not here.
Yes.
I think we should not hear complaints without the complaint.
I agree. Right.
I think if he shows up after the break, continue it.
Okay.
I think she should not have to sit around and wait.
Okay. All right. Member Wolf.
So if he doesn't show up, then it gets dropped or it gets continued.
It continues to call the chair. So I would like to
call it and do that now.
No, let's take our break now because that's what I was intending to do.
Can I finish my point?
She can leave if she would like to leave. Member Wolf.
This isn't a traffic ticket. Like this, whether or not there was a violation still occurs whether or not the complainant was here.
Here. Courts of law, though.
That's true, but it really helps to have the complainant here.
I'm not arguing that.
Okay, but I also wanted, I had said we were going to take a break. I'm going to take a break, and Ms. Blackman, you can be here at 6:30 or not. It's up to you.
Thank you.
Without prejudice, okay? So at this time, I'd like to recess the meeting until 6:33.
I think downstairs, second floor, yeah. You want to go down to the ground level, yeah, and then go down toward Grove. Yeah. Yeah, that should be open right now. Sure.
Let us know if, when you're down there, you run into that lumberjack raving about banks. Yeah, right?
But actually, probably got more excitement after the way you leave the
Well, I'm already continuing because the other person's here been dismissed because the other person's language shuts down.
There's no barrier for no cost.
Yeah, it's some abstract legal body. There is some arguments around that you can die in the middle of a violation still after. When are we supposed to be back, Mark?
all these years. This is the lecture.
Now this guy knows too. So.
Yeah, so I still don't know. I mean, the basis of my complaint, because I went through but I understand. They're saying that, well, you say that, so we're good. It's 33 years.
Yeah, there's nothing. Yes.
That's how they would have everything except the fact that that was the system. So now, I mean, see, that's my issue. Yes, I did.
No, that's like that's genuine. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of it is like
Scott's been too. Well, for me personally, I'm a little miffed because I gave up my appointments. I was elected last year, and then they needed my seat, so I gave it back to them. And he said, "See if you have it next year." And I went, do this. Sweet talking.
He convinced you.
He sweet talked me, and I think Mark.
Yeah.
Reconsider.
Okay, so I don't know what I can do. Well, I think it's fine. I'm sorry, somebody won't be able to try to get a break. Oh, yeah. No problem. You can make a break. I think it's like for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know, I think a lot of rules and suggestions we haven't found.
Right. We should make that the standard practice. If you do frankly, if you do a physical search, you should say, in these locations. They should include them in the response letter to any request.
I mean, there's nothing in the law that do that, but in terms of responding to us, that is a criteria that we can use. When they go in responding, they look at it. We're not search for, we're asking for.
Right.
They do that and recognize it.
Or we looked at 40 fire stations.
Yeah.
We forgot to look into it.
Right.
I mean, a lot of some of what we were talking about because they're fine. It's just I was amazed by how much the fire department used the passive voice. The passive voice was used by the fire department. Reading that stuff was just.
Yeah.
I think it should.
How long?
And there are reasons that we may want to hear. Are we having fun now?
Try to keep up with everything that's going on here right now. Yeah, it's a little confusing for me. So there you go. Thank you.
So the basis for the complaint is knowing the right to justice against them.
The complainant should show they don't play the show.
And then that they would make it impossible, that they would make it from the distance of practice.
No, I understand. This is crazy. This is crazy.
I'm relatively speed that we're moving through things. That was the more. I think the last meeting. Maybe I'm just
Like this is the part of their report that they usually do not release.
That was your,
that was the reason behind it.
you hear
I'm sure kids being out of school, it's nice when they're back at school. So it's kind of the whole working from home with 3 active people running around. It's not always an easy situation. So is 8 the one that the first complaint committee one that we?
Yeah. Inaugural.
How did it go in the committee? Was it fairly?
It was fine. It was a pretty cut and dry case,
which is perfect for.
Yeah.
We're both.
We'll see how. It's Craig Gold versus the SFPD.
Oh,
it's been a few weeks. But it was, I know.
Yeah, I was more curious just how it, in general, how did it go type of thing. Not the substance. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
How did it go with it?
Oh, the ethics thing was good. Yeah, that was nice. I think. I'm not privy to the lot of history with our troubled relationship with ethics or
It is always good to have these supplies issues that seem to be old and entrenched outside the city in general.
Yeah, and also Washburn's comments music are too obsequious.
That's an interesting comment.
It's a compliment if you look at it.
People coming out the gate extra crazy in 2015. People coming out the gate extra crazy.
Are we allowed to discuss and not paying my mortgage?
Yeah.
I don't think that's on the agenda.
I know.
There's a revolution going on.
Man, that guy was a lumberjack. I know.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, if he would have waited 3 more minutes,
I know. Highland should have came at him like that. He was like, excuse me? I was like, no. Sir, if you just wait another few moments, that would be the appropriate time to make this comment. We're just going to get through the rest of this. But he was going to keep going regardless.
Yes.
Yeah. I haven't seen him. But they're doing the historic preservation meeting down the hall right now. So I think that kind of brings in an extra element. I mean, we got our own, but...
I'm sure every body does.
Yeah.
Recton Park has it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because they got a link into the urban forestry thing too, right?
Oh, it's just I mean, I think politics in San Francisco is very difficult. I think Recton Park politics is most difficult. You're just like, there is just not a way. There's no way to please.
That thing was on the ballot last time. Now there should be turf.
Right.
Yeah. Why the fuck? I voted.
After it's been voted on 12 times.
Why?
Right. Yeah.
Why is the whole city being involved in this decision?
If you're not in the know, too, you just be like, politics, Recton Park? It's like, no, trim the trees, cut the grass.
Did you read the New York Times article on that?
No.
The New York Times wrote an article about the soccer field and the process that they had to go through.
Which soccer field?
So this is the it's Beach Chalet.
Okay.
Right, and that it literally has been a 12-year process.
Yeah.
They wanted to put in an astroturf onto fields that have been uncapped, right?
Yeah.
And I get that there's 2 sides to this argument.
Yeah.
But one side has past 12 different bonds. And then the other side still wasn't happy, so they put it to a vote of the. Right, so you're like, what is the point of having processes if there's not a beginning, middle, and end?
Yeah.
Right, regardless of whether, what side you are on. This
people are passionate about the. Yeah. It's like Roe v's Wade.
It was, I was just like.
You're on the right. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Are you on the
It's supposedly the most due diligence ever done on a soccer field in the history of the world.
Nobody cared when they put AstroTurf into one in Silver Terrace. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that right, the AstroTurf fields in the Mission are used 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right, and so it's like it's huge from that point of view. It's huge success.
Yeah.
Right, and the Mission and like
no maintenance. We're in a drought.
Yeah, it was great. All of a sudden, you went to do it out in Richmond, LA.
Yeah.
It was like became huge and controversial. Like the Mission is small.
Yeah.
Was it
huge? Huge.
I didn't even understand the politics of it. I was just like, why am I voting on this?
Because where are the fewest number of open spaces for children to play on? District 5. And the one's in Golden Gate Park. Right, exactly in the park. I know, it was one of these, it was just like one of these.
I feel like it's really more precedent.
Yeah.
It was just like,
Wow. Playing on tire crumbs? Is that what you guys are talking about?
yeah, we're just discussing. We're discussing how 2015 off to a banner.
So is that tire crumb thing to stay or go?
Wait, what tire crumbs?
Tire crumbs at soccer fields? Is that what you're talking about?
No, we're talking about the top cheat. Was it H&I?
Yeah, there were two of them.
Right, there was one was right.
It was poison pills. Keep them as grass or so. And then the day that it passed, after election day, they were knocking it down. I don't know. I mean, I was all gung-ho about, look, we need the fields, put the turf down, let's have this, like, so sure, I keep hearing all this stuff about the tire crumbs and this and how they get all over your
Here you go. No, I feel another bell.
Well, I'm saying I don't know the answer. I've never played on them. I played on I played on turf in college, and it really sucked. Because my first 2 years was grass, and then they converted our field to turf. But it was the old-fashioned turf. It was concrete.
Yeah.
And then with like a sponge pad.
Yeah.
And then
New turf is good.
turf.
It's not bad at all.
Now remember, this is 1982. This is 30 years ago.
Oh, no, never dismissed it.
Yeah.
You could slide tackle. And because it was Schenectady, New York, by like the end of October, it was freezing.
Yeah.
Freezing, so you couldn't tackle. It was hard as
Yeah.
I don't know what they put in.
Yeah.
Like
The new stuff is good. Yeah.
Don't put it on. It's like you might as well.
Yeah.
And for girls soccer, it was the ball was so fast.
Yeah. My only complaint on the new stuff is like the little rubber
That's the
sand.
tire crumb. That's the tire crumb. What's our next case? Fire test?
Well, Gibbs is probably going to get continued unless no, Gibbs was the one that we were waiting to see.
Oh, yeah. So we've got
Gibbs is honestly open and shut though.
Gibbs what?
Gibbs is open and shut.
I'm going to discuss the substance of it.
Which one was Gibbs? It was the library. What was it? It was the library.
He was denied. He wasn't given 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's done. I've done that before.
But it's probably going to get continued anyway.
Yeah.
And then after that,
there's like precedents on that one, right? I mean, there's like tons of case law.
Yeah.
Doing that forever. Why is he laughing?
He's leaving.
He's leaving. He's like, we're not discussing.
Yeah. I feel sorry for Sue Blackman, who had to sit around for 2.5 hours.
Oh, well, she left, right?
Well, yeah, but she's still here since 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that's if they show
didn't know the historic preservation meeting's got such a presence in there.
That's the police commission.
Oh, is that what's going on?
Yeah.
I thought the agenda outside said open historic preservation.
I just checked it. I looked at Susie Loftus is in there, Chief Sir Julius Sturman.
I like the Sasquatch.
Yeah, what's this with the Jewphobia rocket?
I mean, my grandmother on my mother's side was.
Well, it's not meant to be. It's descriptive. It's not meant to reflect your religious background. It's descriptive. But it's yeah. Is it a new look? Are you just saying, yeah, I'm gonna grow my hair? That's what my hair looked like in college. It just kept going out so thick. It just kept going like this. Just waiting to hit menopause. I'm not talking about products. I'm talking about scissors.
I'm going Sasquatch. Remember Sasquatch? I'm definitely pretty short Sasquatch.
I called you Grizzly Adams when I walked in.
Enjoy it while you can.
That's right.
You're a lucky man. When it thins like this, that's how my hair used to be, and then it just thins. In case you hit that age, hormones, boom, gone.
Do you see how the city set up
Yeah. He benefited from you.
Well, but it's not like.
Just walk away. You should, I was kind of surprised you didn't do that. I would never. The only way I would ever accuse myself if I was accepting money from somebody and I
Well, then you have to.
Then you have to. That I get.
There's many different times.
Accepting that doesn't even make sense.
If you're accepting, I have a fiduciary relationship with somebody. No, I'm saying this was a client of mine, it's like you're a consultant. You're receiving money from them, you're time and yourself, and then you're preventing them from getting enough votes to provide coffee.
And an espresso at 3:30.
All right. That's the plan.
Standard practice. That's how you do it. This ain't my first rodeo.
It is, yeah. But ethically, right from the beginning, I say client who's paying me money to do consulting and other things.
Okay, Sunshine Ordinance Task Force is now back in session at 6:33. Ms. Brown, would you call the next item on the agenda, please?
Item number 6 is file number 14087, complaint filed by Jason Gibbs against the San Francisco Library Commission for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.15C for failure to provide adequate time for public testimony at September 18, 2014 meeting.
I don't see either party here for this matter.
Do we even have the dog here?
So, Member Phil Hall.
I don't want to dismiss this. I think we should hear it on the merits at some point. The library person was here, isn't now. I think we should just continue this for next month and we'll see how we deal with it then. I don't want to get into right now the thing about what we do when someone isn't here and continues this bubble. I think let's just continue this matter.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there public comment on the motion to continue this matter?
Peter Warfield, Library Users Association. I'm not a party to this complaint. We aren't a party to this complaint. And I do think there needs to be more clarity with respect to your procedures and maybe your practice when somebody doesn't show up for a hearing. Certainly, I think that it's possible to go forward, as Member Wolf suggested, even in the absence of a complainant, because some complaints particularly, well, some are complex and some are quite simple. have certainly been times when I thought, gee, why do I need to come in? The administrator sends a note saying your attendance is mandatory, but it doesn't say why. Sometimes the complaint stands on its own. Didn't they give me X, what they were supposed to do, and if, for example, I won't use this example or try this one, but let's say it's an immediate disclosure request response. If it's late, it's late. Here's what I got, and it was 3 days late, or 5 days late, or a week late. So I do think you need to be clear. I also think you need to be much more clear with the public, because I have filed complaints and repeatedly gotten instructions. Attendance is mandatory, but it doesn't say what happens if you don't attend or can't attend or what the options are. I haven't heard publicly whether you heard from the complainant or not. So I think that's key, whether the complainant was properly notified about the meeting so that the complainant would understand that it's happening and so on and so forth. I certainly think that's something that should be ascertained. But at this point, one way or the other, I would agree with the motion to put it over until next time. I would certainly suggest getting real clarity as much as you can tonight, but also for the future, and particularly in this case and in general, as to what is required in fact. And is it really required? Or can a person say, I'd like to have this tried, heard without my presence? I've said everything I need to say in the complaint. So I support the motion. As again, I would ask your administrator, did Mr. Gibbs get clear notification at the appropriate time? Was anything received from him about not coming? And whether he had a preference with regard to how or if this would be heard at this time. Thanks.
Well, Mr. Evans, to your knowledge, did Mr. Gibbs contact?
I did not receive any contact, and I checked the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force email, and I did not see an email from Mr. Gibbs.
And he was notified about, I see the email to him. The date was December 22nd, noticing about the meeting on today's date. So, without objection, could we approve continuance, and we'll request that this be on the agenda for next month, full task force meeting. And Mr. Evans, would you call the next item on the agenda?
Next item is item number 7, file number 14097, complaint filed by Michael Casanola against the San Francisco Fire Department for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sections 67.21, 67.25, and 67.29-7 for failure to respond to requests for public records in a timely and complete manner.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Member Falcone.
So I believe the representative of the fire department is here and the complainant is not here, so we're in a similar situation. Not the same as previous.
Right.
And so maybe we do.
That's the respondent?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the respondent's been here all evening. The respondent knows the complainant. Was the complainant here earlier? Okay, the complainant is. So have we heard anything from the complainant?
I have not received any information from the complainant, Madam Chair.
That he was not going to attend. Okay. Well, this is really unusual. We used, not sure what the deal is here, but do I have a motion to continue this?
Motion to continue.
Is there a second? Second. Member Wolf?
Should we give the respondent an opportunity to speak to the continuance as opposed to just public comment?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Sir, would you please come here and...
Do we have to go to jurisdiction?
We could hear you with the determined jurisdiction.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I would be saying, but...
What is your name?
My name's Rob. I'm the... thank you. I'm the compliance public records officer for the department, and I'm not sure exactly what would you like to hear from me.
Are you? How about this? Are you through the chair? Do you have any objections to a continuance on this case?
No, that's fine.
Before you go, your name and what you actually do there again?
Yeah,
Is it right by me?
Bond.
Rob Bond.
Yeah, I'm a compliance officer. I'm also the public records officer. So that's just one of my duties, is actually responding to public records requests besides a lot of other duties.
So you're also a firefighter or
Yeah, firefighter, paramedic, etc. Then I do a lot of other things as well. So.
Through the chair.
Yes. Vice Chair Highland.
Mr. Bond, I would be annoyed if I was in your case that and it's not here, you sat here for 3 hours, and you have every right to request to hear this case without just so you know your options. Oh, and actually, I'm kind of annoyed at the last one as well that she, it's not a good precedent to set. People don't show up, maybe she dismissed them and have to, put the case through again. I mean,
one thing we could do is at the beginning of the meeting find out who's here, but sometimes people come in later because there are items on later in the agenda. So we don't know at the beginning whether or not somebody's going to come, and if we haven't heard from them otherwise, we assume that they'll be here. So
yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it is, why he's asking for these records. It seems that there's probably some other reason for it. It's it did state that it was to build a case. It's a lot of more internal dealings within the department too. So it would be I'm more than willing to help see if I can find these records that he claims exists, records that he created more than likely with and on department equipment, computers and such. So, which means that he would have had access to those records to create.
Right, this was an unusual case when I was reviewing it, and because he's still working with the department and has access to all this information himself. So, I think one thing we can say is, the fact that this hearing is not going to be completed tonight doesn't prohibit you from helping him. So that perhaps it'll resolve and he won't have to come back here again.
Yeah, yes, but I haven't heard any. There's no communication from him since this was filed.
Okay, all right.
So, to continue that thought, I think rather than just continue, I think you should add some notes in there. We'll go back to last case too about contacting the complainant, getting a confirmation that will be the next hearing. Likewise, in this case, rather than continuing, and then this gentleman shows up again and waits 3 hours.
And if they don't, is that risk of us?
Yes. I think there should be some strong language in there. That's awesome. And I want to suggest that the last case too. Perhaps we just have a letter out saying, if you weren't here, you give me a one-time continuance. You can confirm it would be the next time.
Actually, I think we probably have some procedures in place. Victor would know, but you guys, there are procedures for all kinds of contingencies, and there may be for this as well.
It's one thing that I was really curious about too that I haven't heard from him was that if he actually had the ability to, because he was informed or advised that since he is a captain at Station 34 and the captains are the ones that are responsible for maintaining records at the stations and have access to all those email accounts that relate to that site, that he should be looking himself for those records. But I don't know if he actually did that. And
he's saying he's the custodian of records that he's asking for?
He may be.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but then there was a timing where he was at that station when he first filed the request. But towards the end of it, he actually was moved over to a different station. So he no longer is at that same station.
Okay, so let's, rather than adjudicate this, we have a motion to continue. And I'd like to hear some public comment on that, if there is any. Seeing none. Member Philpott, and then let's take a vote on the motion. And then Member
I agree with Vice Chair Harlan. We should send a communication, and we should talk, and I guess hopefully we will at the Rules Committee or elsewhere about how to deal with these sort of situations. But I think we could also ask Mr. Bond to reach out to Mr. Casanola and see if there's anything else you can do to whatever you can reasonably do, and if it goes away, so much the better for everyone. But I'm also concerned, and I wanted to mention, since we're now continuing these 3 cases, that's going to, have an impact on our agenda next month, which I thought was going to be, it looked like it was going to be an all very hard thing. So it's just backing us up further. So we really do need to have a way to continue for good reason, or dispose of matters that are on the calendar. Yeah, we've all spent time reading all this stuff.
Right.
Through the chair, I know Victor has things in place, but I seem to remember last year that we ended the case or dismissed the case because the claim was not here. But that running several.
Yeah, I think we give at least one continuance.
Right.
But if this comes back next month and the complainant still isn't here, then we would dismiss it. We also sometimes continue cases to the call of the chair. I mean, this might be a case for that, given the special circumstances.
And then based on future correspondence, you can then not continue it.
Right. I think Victor had reasons to either do it one way or another. I think he didn't want to continue, or maybe just call the sheriff and everything is still pending.
I guess that's right. I remember that conversation. Okay, let's continue it, and Victor will work on it. The next month's agenda we can maybe stagger it so we don't have all of these cases next month or whatever, they might go away. So. Without objection, well, Member Wolf.
We can do without objection, then it doesn't.
Okay, without objection, we'll continue this. Thank you, sir, for your patience.
And then before you leave, Mr. Bond, the only other thing is, it might be obvious based on what Member Coppell said, but if you're able to resolve it, certainly get in touch with our administrator so we don't know that this is still hanging over our heads.
I will.
Thank you.
Rob's been around for a long time. He's been before the task force a long time, really.
It may be obvious, just want to make sure.
I'm not in the task force a long time. This is the first fire department. Okay. Mr. Adams, did you call item number 8?
Item number 8 is recommendation from the Compliance Amendments Committee. The Compliance Amendments Committee held a hearing and reviewed the file number 14100 and issued a report, recommendation for the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force review. Upon review of the committee's recommendations, the task force shall either accept the recommendations of the committee or schedule a complaint for a hearing before the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force at a future date. And file number 14100 is a complaint filed by Craig Gold against the Office of the City Attorney for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sections 67.21b for failing to respond to a request for public records in a timely and complete manner. And the Compliance and Amendments Committee determined that the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force has determined over the matter and has jurisdiction over the matter and recommended that the respondent be found in violation of Administrative Code Section 67.21b for failure to respond to a request for public records in a timely manner.
So this is our first such case, and there are a lot of complexities here. The case itself is straightforward, but our procedure is anything but. Member Hebner, would you like to recount what happened at CIC last month?
Right. We heard this matter of compliance and amendments. We heard both from the complainant and the respondent. Craig Gold was present, and City Attorney or spokesman Matt Dorsey was present as well. We determined that there was not a violation of the Sunshine Ordinance for failure to refuse public records, acknowledging that Section 6254 of the California Government Code exempts production of records pertaining to pending litigation It was not a particularly controversial hearing, if I remember correctly, though I understand that that's a subjective determination. But we did find that the records were not produced in a timely manner and therefore found a violation of 67.21 Section B of the Sunshine Ordinance, and with City Attorney Spokesman Matt Dorsey agreeing and stipulating to such finding such a violation.
So are there questions from members? Member Pilpel.
I don't have any questions. I was there for part of the hearing. I think I was just going to suggest procedurally, if we're okay with where this is going in the recommendation, I'm prepared to move to accept the recommendation and find the violation is recommended and prepare to finalize an order on that basis. I don't have anything more to add to it, and then we would figure out whether to send to a committee or just make it as a pocket violation. So that was my thought, but I'm open to whatever.
Pocket violation.
Like that.
Yeah, that's kind of the term. Member Wolf.
In reading over this actual case, it seems like the recommendation is fine, but this feels like a really weird territory to vote for a violation that we haven't actually heard discussed, and we're just basing it purely off of the report from the committee and the documentation. In this case, like I said, I feel fairly comfortable with it, but it seems like a dangerous precedent to me.
First Member David, then Member Pilpel.
So, a couple of things. I'm going to come back to what Member Wolf said. I just think procedurally, I feel like that we should take the procedural, if we're going to move forward with these types of complaints and deal with it this way, we should still take the necessary procedural steps as a task force, meaning that we still, as a task force, should find, what's it called? No, that we have jurisdiction, excuse me. I think that we should take those steps in these cases, and then I think when it comes to the hearing, that's when I think we should have, Member Hafner would be appropriate for him to give the summation, and we should still do public comment, like all those types of things procedurally. I think that if we don't, and then getting back to what Member Wolf is saying is, this is something that we've wrestled with. The issue that you just brought up, as we've tried to come up with this, to deal with the backlog of cases of that, and I believe that what Member Washburn and Vice Chair Eichler are trying to do, correct me if I'm wrong, are trying to refer the more seemingly straightforward cases to the smaller commissions for the complaint hearings. And don't forget that either side doesn't have to accept it. They can say, no, I want a full hearing before the task force. Right? So it's not like just because all of a sudden Member Hepner or that committee makes a decision that the respondent, or I always say public defender, just easier for me to say, the respondent or the complainant has to accept that decision. They still can basically come before a full hearing on the task force. So I agree with you that there's some troubling concepts to this, but it's also a way that we've been trying to deal with just the tremendous backlog that we had for years. So it's a balancing act.
Right, and the way this works is that first of all, the complainant must agree to this in the first place. The complainant wants a hearing before the full task force, and it never goes to a committee. And also, just a point of information, any complainant or even respondent can ask their matter to be reheard if they don't like our determination for a matter before the full task force.
Or they could be here.
So, or they could be here. They were noticed about this meeting. Mr. Gold, if he was not satisfied, could have come and requested that we all hear it. But I agree, looking at, it was Member Hubner and I, we were two people that heard this. So, we're just feeling our way here. Member Hoppenstein.
Oh, actually, you answered my question. I was going to ask if the parties had in fact been noticed that they were on the agenda this evening. If they're not here. I think that's Helen in some part. As to the apprehension, I mean, this is a fairly, that's the board of supervisors would approach this when they have a committee hearing with the supervisors present. They make a recommendation to the full board of supervisors. It goes to like a consent calendar or it's sort of I don't think that this is entirely without precedent. I think it does put the onus on members of this task force to vet our determination, and if you guys have concerns about it, be prepared with those before we come to this hearing. But otherwise, I'm fairly comfortable with the determination made here. Thank goodness it was a fairly uncomplicated matter. Had it been more complicated, maybe we could have requested it for a full task force here as well.
Yeah. It was one of those matters that it all appeared very settled at the end of the matter. So I just reviewed the packet here, and yeah, they were noticed by parties. So, Member Wolf?
Procedurally, what are we doing to ensure that the complainant and to a lesser extent the respondent are aware of their ability to, if they're not happy with the outcome, to take it to the full task force?
Victor covered that.
Yeah,
I think the email talks about that.
Yeah, I think Victor has a template where he kind of lays all this out for everybody.
I'm sorry, I know Victor's not here, but in his absence, I know that the administrator finalized recommendations due to time constraints, and he recommended that the task force accept the committee's recommendations, as there doesn't seem to be an outstanding issue that can be clarified with additional hearings. Both the complainant and the respondent were invited to the meeting, but not required to attend. And right now, I think it's accept the recommendation or schedule for a future hearing date. Is the administrator's recommendation.
Through the chair, I think one thing is we move forward to adopt this mechanism. When it comes out of committee, we're differentiating. I call it a committee report an action versus referring back to the full task force for discussion, just to kind of give us an idea of where you got with it and how final it is, and any determinations reached, or whether it really just needs to be brought back and rehashed from the get-go or carried on as discussion. Just that might be useful language going forward. And maybe it was there and I missed it.
Well, in the agenda item, it says in parentheses, it says that upon review of the CAC's recommendations, the CTF shall, 1, accept the recommendation or schedule the complaint for a hearing. So it's on the full task force to determine which of those two things to do.
Even if, I'm just trying to make it all language the board of supervisors uses.
So what's it called as procedure?
I think we would call this a committee report, would they not?
They would. Normally, their section on committee reports are for last-minute items, but the concept of reporting this out as a committee report, I'm just looking here, for example, we don't have a general report from the CAC, which we usually have. So we probably could have that part of our committee reports, recommendations on complaints heard, and then other things.
Well, this agenda item does say recommendation. So I think, so we'll call them recommendations, but yeah.
So we need a motion to accept or
make a motion to, for either choice 1 or choice 2. So, do I hear a motion?
So, may I just ask a question? Why do not, I just procedurally, why do not have to, as a full task force, find jurisdiction? Why is that skip? Why is that skip? You found it as a 2-person.
I think.
But I'm just asking procedurally. That's all I'm asking. Yeah.
If I may, I think that we're not, what's the word? Subordinating? Something or othering that decision. I think that too is coming as a recommendation. So by agreeing to or whatever the word is, validating the recommendation is both finding jurisdiction and doing something on the merits.
That satisfies that.
So it's like an omnibus action.
And historically, the complaint committee, one of its primary functions was to determine jurisdiction.
Fine. Great.
So, yeah. All right, so is there a motion?
Motion on number 1.
Is there a second? To accept the recommendation of compliance members.
Second.
All right. Is there any public comments? Really? Okay. This was your idea first, or one of your ideas. Okay.
So, just one other thing. I guess this draft, this recommendation, which is sort of a draft order, will get dressed up into a full order. So what I will do in the future, not tonight, is come to these meetings when we have a recommended order with that marked up so that we can expedite the process. Because it looks like these things, if they come out of committee, are pretty close to fully baked. And perhaps this language that's at the bottom here about invited but not required to attend, we'll consider that should be in the template of the email so it's more clear and respond to what's going on. This can be more of a draft order than a sort of hybrid.
Okay, just
But anyway.
but Vice Chair Highland is the one that's been reviewing them. And then I see them.
Yeah, but I'm just, right.
All right, so could we have a vote on the motion, please?
On the motion, Member Rummel?
Aye.
Member Aye. Member Wilson?
Aye.
Wilson, aye. Member Wolf?
Pass.
Wolf abstains.
No, passes.
Passes, excuse me. Member Pilpel?
Aye.
Pilpel, aye. Member Hebner?
Aye.
Member Hebner, aye. Member David?
Aye.
David, aye. Member Fisher?
Aye.
Fisher, aye. Member Hinsey?
Aye.
Hinsey, aye. Vice Chair Highland?
Aye.
Highland, aye. Chair Washburn?
Aye.
Washburn, aye.
And then it goes back to me, and I vote aye.
And Member Wolf goes aye. We have all ayes.
Okay. A watershed moment. Okay. Ms. Ramos, did you call the next item on the agenda?
And the next item, item number 9, is an update on the Ethics Commission's policy regarding Sunshine Ordinance Task Force referrals.
Member Hutner, would you like to bring the body up to date on what happened
Yeah, so
after we did this?
right after this is very you call this a cold word. We went to the Ethics Commission right after the Compliance Amendments Committee hearing, at which Chairperson Washburn and I presented our task force preferences on how to address the 4 issues that are in the Ethics Commission's memorandum that Jesse and Artie put together. It went very well. It was not contentious. It felt collaborative. And I am still actually waiting on, from Jesse Minardi, he was going to put together their findings, which were announced on the record during the Ethics Commission's meeting, but I will do a poor job of reciting them right now. Some of them ended up being sort of hybridized versions of the various recommendations that they have made. Remember, just handed me minutes of the special meeting. So if anybody cares to see this, the December 16th special meeting minutes of the San Francisco Ethics Commission, otherwise it may be just a better idea to wait for Jesse Minardi's final document to come down the pipeline.
So, I agree with Member Hebner. It felt to me as well as a very collegial meeting, and they heard us and adopted some of our suggestions. I think the final product is one that we can certainly live with. I think that we recognize things that we could be doing better to make our referrals heard and seriously considered. So look forward to seeing the final draft. But I thank everybody for your input on this. I think this is a big moment because for years and years and years we've been butting heads with the Ethics Commission, and now there's a chance that we'll be able to work together productively. Member Bilbao.
I agree. I think this hopefully will lead to more meaningful enforcement and better relations on both sides. My understanding is that they will be sending us a confirming note this month of what was done, and then that's going to get incorporated into their rules and regs. So we'll have a final approval in a month or two. But that they've certainly made policy choices. And that's all to do. So, yay, and thank you, lucky, for your performance.
Mr. Evans, did you comment this family?
The next item.
Any public comment?
Seeing no public comment, next item, number 10, is an update on St. Croix versus Superior Court of City and County, San Francisco.
This is my time to shine.
Let it shine.
So I'll be brief with this. I know a lot of people here were already familiar with the initial filing of this case, but the real party at interest when Alan Grossman initially requested from the Ethics Commission drafts of all of their sunshine ordinance regulations and any correspondence with the city attorney's office, legal advice regarding provisions that they would include in those drafts and whatnot, and then correspondence with the city attorney's office as well, emails, anything like that. In response to that, Ethics furnished certain documents but withheld others pursuant to attorney-client privilege. Grossman was unhappy with that. He filed a lawsuit. The trial court originally granted Grossman's petition to compel production of the withheld attorney-client communications, but on appeal, the Court of Appeal found that Section 67.24B1(3) is pretty much is actually invalidated now. Because of, for several reasons actually, that it violates the evidence code, which is incorporated into the charter. So, moving forward, if we get complaints on this basis, we'll be definitely looking at this case. I'm sure it'll be cited in the future several times when someone requests documents from a city agency. The city agency declines to provide them on the basis of their attorney-client privileges. They can no longer cite to 6724B1(3) because it's been invalidated. And Grossman appealed. He filed a writ, but the writ was denied up to the California Supreme Court. So this is good standing case law as of right now, unless it gets challenged somewhere in the future. But as of right now, this is the law. Attorney-client privilege applies to city agencies. They can assert that as an exemption.
Well, and not just that, but it's attorney-client privilege about compliance with the Sunshine Ordinance.
Yes.
That was the specific provision. So voters had said specifically, we want to do away with attorney-client privilege for advice about compliance with the ordinance. And the court looked at that and said, no, that's a violation of the charter and that. So that probably.
So we need to get the sunshine ordinance into the charter.
Well, I don't even know that. I'm not the city government expert, but so if there's actually I think that probably would if there was an explicit provision. If the evidence code is just like incorporated by reference or whatever.
If you amend the charter?
Yeah.
I suppose. I won't speculate on that.
I'm not aware, so I can speculate. I don't know how that would play out, because I think you've got home rule issues versus state preemption issues and uniform application of lawyers' responsibilities under the canons of ethics and all of that. I think it gets complicated. Anyway, but for the moment, I think the takeaway is that particular provision is not operative, which, kind of sucks in a lot of ways.
And as DCA Cole said, I'm sure the city's attorney's office will make it very clear when they think that provision applies. So,
and if there is a memo that goes out, maybe we can get a copy of that. Because there probably will be.
If and when.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, there was a remitter issue last month, and there's still some steps that have to go through the jury. All right, I'm done.
Wow. Thank God he's not a lawyer.
Pardon me?
I said, thank God he's not a lawyer.
I object.
There'll be some parentheses there.
All right. I may be able to get to see most of the lawyers here tonight. What do you think? Okay. Ms. Evans, would you call the next item on the agenda?
Item 11 is
public comment.
Should be no public comment. Item number 11 is an update, the notice to Board of Supervisors regarding Sunshine Ordinance Task Force members' absences.
So, I don't have any comment on this. Anybody have any comment? Okay, Member Winston.
I'm sure you all have been following the news the past couple months. Early December was a very, very, very crazy time. So, my apologies to the task force. I was actually in Ottawa on December 3rd, but I was doing a lot of traffic. Sometimes it happens.
Right. No, I understand.
I think to the chair, the comment I have on this is that it's something that probably supposed to move forward and send a letter to the Board of Supervisors, but I think we need to balance that with keeping the full task force, giving members of the public a chance to have full 11 votes. So maybe it's a balancing act. There's been times in the past in the administration where we've had people that did offshore, but we were so short that I think to move forward with that balance. So I don't know if that's something that should be revisited.
Yeah, and the other thought is that in the past we've also excused certain absences. Travel for work was one that we always excused. But again, you're right. If it does deprive members of the public with the full complement of people. Nothing before us is very easy. So it's a hard time to be a journalist too. Oh my God, just today. Whoa. Okay.
I don't know what happens today. I guess I'll read that tomorrow.
Oh, Mexico, Paris.
Oh, Paris, right? So
Paris, yeah. Paris, yeah.
Plus, the mayor appointed a new supervisor.
Not yet.
So yes, I am the other guy on here. I just wasn't well last month, and I will try to time my illnesses so they don't conflict with everything. I think if the thing hasn't gone, it should. I would just suggest perhaps in the last line, before we thank you for your attention, that members have been reminded of the attendance requirement. I think that might soften it a little bit. It seems rather harsh.
Mr. Evans, could you add that? A statement to that effect.
Chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we should call the next item on the agenda. Public comment? Okay.
And the task force is required to send memo, and the administrator requests direction on the item that we just, on the Board of Supervisors memo.
I think we should send it, but with that added line.
Okay. And item number 12 is the administrator's report. You can note that the meeting schedule listed and the administrator's denial of Carlos Gracias complaints with advice from the TCA and notification to the chair.
And again, there's a whole procedure for that. When a complainant wants a matter reheard or is not happy with it. So, are there members, do you have any comments about?
So I have a comment about a conversation that, well, I was sitting here and Ms. Dave Cash was having a conversation with me about that she said that she told me that Chair Washburn informed her that all of her complaints, all of her filings have to go to the complaint committee. Now, so I just have to that, and so I just want to make the task force aware that Ms. Datash is making such statements. And so it was, and as we had just said, that you have to voluntarily, right, agree to the complaint. So I just want to.
So that Mr. Chair, that concerns me because we have our first complaint committee meeting on the 20th, and they're all three Ms. Datash's cases. Is she coming in against her will?
I have no recollection of saying that hers had to be heard by the complaint committee, and I never would have said anything like that because that is not our policy.
So let's just say that perhaps, as has happened in the past, that maybe Ms. Datash misunderstood or was confused, as has happened in the past. So the complaint committee convenes and our matters are before you, and I suppose you could tell her that they don't have to be heard then, but they can be heard then, and she'll get a hearing quickly rather than at a later time. And I'm sure that the communication to her about this indicated that if she didn't want it to be heard before the complaint committee, it didn't have to be. Let's consider it a misunderstanding. And on the 20th, as I'm the chair of that committee, I will communicate that to her that we're here to hear 3 complaints, and she can either move on or you can work them out or whatever.
I'm sure you'll do just fine.
Why don't we have Victor confirm with her that she doesn't have to, and then if instead of having her show up and everybody show up on the 20th, if she doesn't actually want to have her committee, then we can get somebody else, some other complaints in on the 20th.
So, Mr. Evans, could you understand all the nuances here? Okay, great. Very good. Member Colville.
So this is actually a great administrative report. I think the summary of the complaint status and improvement, the pending list, this is all good. I did start to look at the key packet, so we've got a lot of work to do on Monday, and that includes follow-ups and related matters and some of the anonymous stuff. So we're actually working through our backlog. I mean, if we can push more work, obviously we're pushing work down to the committees, and that's what things going to happen. So that's all good. And I look forward to the Rules Committee discussion on the 20th to continue to sort through our rules.
Good question to the chair. When is Mr. Young back, or perhaps
Monday, yes, Mr. Young will be back on Monday.
All right. Is there any public comment on the administrator's report? All right. Seeing none, Mr. Evans, would you call the next item on the agenda, please?
Item 13 is announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items.
Anybody?
I have a couple things that are coming down the line. One is the amendment to the Sunshine Ordinance to ensure that Board of Supervisors know they are subject to the calendar requirement. It's arguable that they already are, as potentially being department heads of their offices. But this is something that taking the compliance amendments will be going before EOT and then before the full task force. But it's something that we're considering. It would have to be approved as any other piece of legislation would. So that is either through, I believe that's through a 2/3 vote of the Board of Supervisors, or I forget exactly, majority. So, it's going to take a little bit of wrangling to get them to realize that this is for the sake of increasing trust in government operations. So that's one matter. And then the other matter that's coming down, Supervisor John Avalos has proposed a piece of legislation that I think is very much within our wheelhouse. It's the call for more transparency around local government surveillance procedures, specifically with respect to so-called stingrays, which are a technological device that sort of simulates a cell phone tower and intercepts cell phones in an immediate vicinity. There is some evidence to suggest that San Francisco, in fact, possesses one of these, but there's strong evidence to suggest that San Francisco possesses one of these, but there's been no public discourse over whether they actually do have one, and more importantly, how it's being used. That may be due to a federal NDA agreement. I'm not exactly sure. Anyway, this legislation is being drafted. It would be something that I think is going to be presented to the board in the next month or so. I don't know what our practice is on making resolutions on pending pieces of legislation, but seeing as this is clearly something that is trying to increase transparency around local government issues, I think it's something that would be ripe for discussion amongst us and a potential resolution from the Sunshine Task Force to the full Board of Supervisors.
We have in the past put forward, we have come out and supported various legislation, so we can certainly do this. Yes, Member Winston, can you tell us more?
I'm actually going to say anything you guys do on that legislation, I can't be a part of because I report on it, and I have reported on it in the past. So. But if you want any more information about the technologies they use, I can tell you offline or whatever. But it's interesting as part of statewide efforts to try to adopt this sort of legislation.
I'm very supportive of that work. I'm not very supportive of surveillance of the public. I would suggest Member Hefner, if you want to just draft like a very simple 2-paragraph letter and bring it before us next month, we can do it like here at the end, and then just adopt it. I don't know if we need a fancy resolution.
I'm bringing it up sort of prematurely, and sort of I don't know how quickly the city attorney's office is going to have the legislation drafted, but as things come down, I'll make sure to keep the task force apprised if that's preferable.
Or we could just support in concept that there should be more oversight of, how you want to draft it. Okay. We should do more of this. This is good.
Okay.
So, Member Walsh.
Yes, Member.
So I don't. We hit on this a little bit earlier, but and maybe this is when Victor returns. But I do think that we should come up with some type of ways to deal with cases where there is, the complainant doesn't show up, or like as you suggested earlier tonight, like you get one turn to be continued. But I think that we should get something in writing as to what is our policy, and maybe as you said, it already exists.
Right, Mr. Jones, could you ask Victor to gather together what he has and put this on the agenda? Our policy for continuances.
Well, specifically continuances when there's a no-show, right? Like that's kind of right, because as Member Bell says, I think we're doing a great job of getting through back cases. But tonight, what did we continue? 3? Yeah. And so that's it's not a good percentage. But,
it's very unusual, but you're right. Yeah.
And actually, can I suggest that if it's not already on for the Rules Committee, that we maybe make that an issue for Rules Committee for the 20th. So, this could be a very simple fix, a sentence or two out of the procedure. Sure.
Got it. Is there anything else? Motion to adjourn?
On that note.
Public comment on anything?
Chair Washburn, on that note, since it did sort of come up, actually, this sort of broke my heart today because I thought about our meeting today, and we have somebody from Society of Professional Journalists. We have Richard emailing us all the time, so I don't think we normally do this. this, but could we at least adjourn in memory of the 12 people that lost their lives and some prayers for the 11 that are pretty